tumbling down the rabbit hole?
You could say that.
I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he is expecting to wake up.
Welcome, everyone. This is Team Rabbit Hole Edition 289 with Jordan Bates. Zeitgeist mapping well. Join the team as we touch base with Jordan, who's a father now. Ideas are shifting, and he is in Germany. Welcome and well met once again, Jordan.
What up, dude?
What up, guys? How's it going? Nice to be here.
As you know, I was fucking late to the meeting, so thanks for bearing with us in the green room. I totally lost track of time, so we kind of got rushed. But we're here. We're met. It's all good. Something we do on the podcast, at least for now, I might switch it when we hit 300 to just reading I Ching hexagrams, actually. But at the moment, I'm doing numerologically reductions of the episode number for a major arcana. So 2 plus 8 is 10. 10 plus 9 is 10 technically. So 1 is the number. The Starman, this is the magician card. It says, I will blow your mind. The Starman, or the Alchemist, the magician card in traditional tarot. It's about manifesting your reality. Ideas are communicated and brought into the physical world with ease. You have everything you need to create the world you desire. Reconfigure yourself in liberating, expressive, and complex ways. Dope card. Raphael, what do you got?
Oh, that's another one of my favorites. So, Jordan, whilst I talk about it, you may want to turn down your video quality once again, because right now it looks like 56K.
Couldn't handle it.
Dial-up.
Couldn't. The 1080 was too hot to handle, too cold to hold. But that's okay. So, what is the card, Raphael?
So what we have is the Queen of Thrones. So the Queen of Water.
Looks like a
This
little
is
Buddha.
associated with a fair, dreamy woman, success, happiness, advantage, imagination stronger than feeling. And of course, this is the one card which is double water. So usually emotions, subconscious, and all that stuff. And now, Jordan, I want to see if your connection is stable because you're still pixelated. Talk to us.
Can you hear us, Jordan?
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Yeah, I can hear you.
We can hear you, but
me?
it looks like a very weird mixed media event on the left for me. It's like glitch art.
I changed the video quality. I changed the video quality back to the lowest setting, so that's all I can do.
I believe you. Try this. Try exiting and then coming back on. That's weird. I know we're magician cards. We're fucking making reality do what we want or whatever. But
okay.
I don't know if the oven isn't working.
Great. And now Jim's connection's got issues too. This is great. Well, so what we're gonna do is Jim is gonna rejoin as well. And for a moment, I'll be a solo entertainer. Let's see what I can tell you guys. I already dropped the card. So Queen of Thrones, anyhow, is interesting. It's one of the cards most strongly associated with channeling, I'd say, with a double water association. And also is the 3811. So 38 is when you count up the numbers in the tarot, is the 38th card, and reduces to 11, which is usually adjustment or strength, depending on whether you have a Rider-Waite or a Crowley edition tarot deck. And I'm sincerely hoping that not the whole of the US internet went down, so they're gonna rejoin in a moment. I sincerely hope so. And yeah, welcome everyone joining on Facebook or elsewhere. And while we're still waiting, I'm just gonna replay the intro and hopefully I'll catch you on the other side.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice.
Holy
feeling
crap.
a bit like Alice. Indeed, it seems like
Yeah,
the whole
hitting her
US
head on
internet
every
just went down.
goddamn part of the rabbit hole. It's like this feels like a K hole. Yeah, my internet just totally went out, and here we are.
Yeah, although Jordan
Loki,
actually is in
I'm glad you're having
Germany,
fun.
and his internet went down too, so that's really strange.
We're being fucked,
So
but we're gonna do something fine. All right, well, let's talk for a second, Raphael, until he comes back.
sure, I was just
We're
explaining a
hanging.
bit about the Queen of Thrones to make
Queen
up
of
some
Cups,
content in between. A Queen of Cups, of course, the Queen of Thrones. Yes.
Game of Thrones, man.
No, it's a Queen of the Thrones of Water. That's why. That's the name in
Ah,
the Crowleyan dictionary. So
gotcha.
yes, Jim, you were saying.
Well, I mean, I'm just musing upon the fact that between my not getting the SOS, it's like, look, we had this scheduled. I even told you, hey, we got this at 7:30. But in my mind, I guess it must be daylight savings issues. But I don't know why that would be happening now because we did
Shouldn't be
some
happening
posting it.
anymore
Yeah,
technically. I think
correct.
it's done now. I think
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
synchronized again. But I mean, there's even places like, I guess this is everywhere on the southern hemisphere, I assume, because I know the correlations with Paraguay. And there it's strange in a different way, because during winter here, Europe and Paraguay are only 4 hours apart, and then during summer they're 6 hours apart. So it's always
I'm
stays
so glad
interesting.
Loki's having fun. See, as long as we have fun, I mean, it's like, oh my god, it's crazy, but what are you gonna do when you're live and your pants are pulled down? That reminds me of a story. It's called double shanking. I don't know if you have this in your middle and elementary school young
Sounds
men's and
dangerous.
women's culture. Yeah, it sounds like a prison situation gone wrong. But ironically, my middle school was designed by a prison designer, so it was kind of prison like. But anyway, kids for some reason in
Yes.
kids would, and I guess it's a thing, kind of like tabletopping. Like there's a level of like boundary testing within friendships, right? Where it's like, oh, like kids become pranksters and like fuck around. They're like, oh, whoopee cushions, or oh, let's go blow up, let's go egg in a house, or just the stupid childish shit people do. Well, one thing that manifested for me in my culture was called shanking, and it was when you pulled the pant, you walked up behind somebody, usually a guy friend, because girls don't wear pants that do this really. But like if a guy was wearing, sagging pants or whatever, but this was specifically in PE where we had like a gymnasium outfit that was like barely held together anyway. So that you'd walk up to the person and pull their pants down. It's called shanking. And if you happen to get their underwear or boxers at the same time and they were fully exposed, that's called a double shank. That's kind of the ultimate, I guess. And we were out on the playground and I'm just filling time so people are aware. Um, we were out on the blacktop, a bunch of PE classes, not just my own class. So usually a class is like 25 people, and then this was like 10 groups of 25, so like 250 kids, like a whole period of kids on the blacktop. And my friend, John Fiesel, shout out John, double shanked me, and I just stood there with my dick in the like wind, and I'm just sitting. It's like, what are you gonna do? So that's kind of how this feels, this moment right now, because our guest isn't here. He's fallen off. I was late. My internet wasn't working. It's like double shaking. You just gotta take it as it comes, and we might be attached to preferences, I guess, desires of our hearts and minds. But my God, it doesn't always go as preferred. And we can get into this. What is the highest preference, and is God the highest good and preference, and all of our preferences or not, or whatever. Have you heard from Jordan? Is he
Yeah,
gone?
no, he just wrote he's on his way, so
Okay,
it's good.
well, okay, word. It's like the Wicked Witch of the West on the bike. The tornado's coming. We'll be color in a minute. Darks of the fucking rainbow. We'll be there. So anyway, yeah, we got the Queen of Cups, which I wanted to wait for him for a second just to reiterate this. Queen of Cups, which is like the super feels, the feminine of the cups, the water card. I mean, it's almost like,
Good channeling card, yeah.
yeah, gee, I was gonna say it's like in Minority Report, right? Those empaths in the water. That's some Queen of Cups shit. It's like we see the future and we're on
Mm.
drugs and like we don't even function normally. All right, so what we're kind of filling in time, but Jordan, you look good now. Welcome back. You missed an anecdote of my childhood about being double shanked. Did you ever have that where you grew up, kids pulling kids' pants down, called shanking?
No,
Is
I
that
didn't have that.
okay? So that's an East Coast thing. Iowa rocks harder in different ways. So, what we were kind of getting to here, though, is the Queen of Cups is this feminine water energy, and I was just attributing it to like the Minority Report empaths or whatever they're called, telepaths, or I forget what they were called. You've seen Minority Report, right?
No,
The
I
film?
haven't actually.
Oh, bro, it's a Philip K. Dick book turned movie. I haven't read the book. You should check that out. Tom Cruise, like he's got a
Yeah,
few
sounds
movies
great.
which
Sounds great,
you would
man.
shit your pants over. It.
That's
Rafa,
a
you should
Philip
see
K. Dick thing? I didn't
novel.
know
Philip K.
that.
Dick made the novel, and then it translated into a film with
Mm.
Tom Cruise, of course. It's worth watching. You should
It
check it out.
certainly
It's
was all the hype.
Cool.
It's
yeah.
all about the pre-crime and so on and precognition. But most
Precogs. There you go.
importantly,
Precogs.
precogs, yeah. But most importantly, the idea that you can tell someone's gonna commit a crime, which of course you basically already have with all the social credit scores and so on, right? So
Well, it's a little different.
it's-
Well, see, that's predictive.
yeah,
The social credit
it's
score.
just a little, it's just a
They
little
would get
different for
a
now.
psychic ping because it's a long story, but basically these were like nearly retarded kids who didn't have filters like normal people, so their brains, if they worked together, empathically saw bits of the future, and if the three of them agreed mentally, it's a highly likelihood that this event would happen. It's not certain though. And then they started building the justice system on that. And they're like, look, we can prevent crime because these guys they're having visions of murders and shit. And it's like, well, if we can piece together the crime scene, we can. Oh, this vision is from like in 2 days. Let's go get this guy. And then it doesn't happen. It's like Guilty Before Innocent, weird shit. It's a mind fuck of a film. You love it. Like, dear God, go like figure it out. Figure out how to
Yeah,
watch
that
that.
sounds amazing, man. I
In
would
any
like to
event,
see
so
that.
the Queen of
Yeah.
Cups is very precogish, very feminine, water, psychic, psychedelia, all the feels, kind of, like, oh my God, I'm peeking on acid in a bathtub vibes. As well as the Alchemist, the Starman, the card, the Magician card, which is very much like, oh my God, I am all the elements of the universe combined, playing out like Captain Planet's wet dream. What the fuck is going on? So, like, it's this high level of kind of gnosis of the the participation, like the hub of the wheel participation, but like you are playing in a playing box. And oh my God. So between those two cards, Jordan, what, if anything, resonates? Maybe nothing.
Yeah, word. I'm just gonna turn the light on in this room. I'll be back in 5 seconds.
Word.
And then I'll answer the question.
The Magician, let there be light. I couldn't have empathed that. Well,
Like
look,
a
see, there's
Disney
the
castle in
Holy
the
Ghost.
background.
Yeah, I was like, it's his chair, but it's not his chair because these. I mean, it's making up the background, right? Anyway,
Cool. So yeah, I would say the Magician card is an interesting one that I've had. The Magician archetype is an interesting one that I've had a kind of back and forth relationship with. The way that I relate to that card, like I associate it with probably the third eye chakra the most, and like vision, kind of sight beyond sight, intuition, creativity. And I also at the same time associate it with like magic and manifestation, which I've reached a point of having kind of distanced myself somewhat from the paradigm of magic and manifestation in terms of how a lot of people understand that paradigm.
that's part of the
So
reason you're here because I saw you posting up shit that I was like, he's taking a left turn. He's 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 not as new agey as I thought. He's thinking for himself. God damn it, we got to talk about this. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, yes, this kind of vision of visions, the visionary kind of, but in a how would I put it, like a praxis oriented way. It's like my will be done on the elements or whatever kind of mode.
Yeah. The paradigm of magic is very like will driven, very forceful. In certain strains of it, it can be. And I guess for myself, I just saw the kind of karmic backlash of that type of effect through my own experience and others' experience, and it led me more toward a paradigm of prayer and just kind of like just radical gratitude, just really radical gratitude for this moment
Instead
as
of
it
foisting
is,
or
and
instead of crowleying it, just being like, I'm gonna get my way, goddamn it, or whatever.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
it's more like, you
Yeah.
know what, I'm gonna roll with the punches. If the guest is here, if they're not here, if I'm
Mhm. And
go on to that a
interesting.
little.
One more
I'm
point I'd
curious.
say is that
Okay,
one more point
talk.
on that is that I still do like set intentions, but the way that I tend to set intentions nowadays is more like God, if it is your will, may this come to pass. May I open my heart. May I be what I truly am. May I be love for myself and everyone
It's like a
around me
conduit
today.
for the highest goodwill, as opposed to like my human will knows what's best and I will push it. Kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, exactly. It's like you add in that disclaimer to
So
kind of
I'm
basically
certainly
say,
not here to defend Crowley, but at least from what I've read in the definitions of love is the law, love on the will, that there is supposedly, at least in some circles, a differentiation between the lowercase and uppercase W in terms of will, which would then also potentially explain this differentiation between whether it's an egotistical, shadow side of, oh, I want this for whatever strange reason, or whether it's actually an, let's say, divinely aligned, synchronized will. Because the other question I always need to ask everyone who's like, yeah, sure, you can give it up to your higher, well, I'm not gonna say
We're
it
gonna
now.
get into it. I told you today we're gonna model reality.
But
It's gonna be
because the
good.
thing is, then ultimately, there is the question: what is there except you? If the one, as God or however entity, is all-encompassing, omnipresent, and so on, it must be you as well.
That's
At
a
least
presupposition. I
that is
know. We gotta break it down
no, it's not a presupposition. It's logical. I'm sorry, but please,
to a point.
you can gladly try to.
Well, that's the threshold of which I'm never fully bitten over, just for we're all on the same page. Because I'm raised a Christian, I'd still call myself like a Gnostic, kind of Jungian Christian, and I'm trying to play with like, what do these ideas mean? Like, is it true? Is it a cultural
Yeah, and
relevant? What's
who
going on?
encultured modern Christianity?
I don't know, but David Ewing Jr. isn't my Lord and God. That's all I know. So, in any event,
Can I say something about that?
say
For one,
always interrupt.
I
Say
like
shut the fuck up. I got something to say.
Okay,
I'll be
I like
yeah,
the
Mike's
phrase.
yours.
I like the phrase Gnostic Jungian Christian. Just for one, that's a dope phrase.
That's what we're
and
rocking.
the other thing I would say was that I'm glad Raphael was like, "Hey, be careful not to caricature Crowley because he was a nuanced and sophisticated dude." And I would totally second that. I think Aleister Crowley, like, monumentally important historical figure, just like who took a lot of arrows, like to incarnate or embody as that type of being who plays like a dark magician at the turn of the 19th century is like whoa, like that's some fucking karmic shit to like take
Heavy.
on. That's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I mean, that's a lot for the being, like the soul that played that role. Hypothetically, let's say the soul played that role. Like that's how it feels to me, and it's just like,
Well, it's
man,
kind of his shtick too. He's like,
wow.
"Look, I guess I'm the Babylon working, and we're gonna make the Antichrist." Like I mean, he claimed these to degrees. I'm not like a Crowleyan or a Thelemite, so I can't like quote this stuff. But the idea was like, all right, if these archetypes are real, let's channel them and push the wheel forward into the next Horus-ian aeon or whatever. He was really kind of motivated to
Mm-hmm.
move the wheel. That was
Mm-hmm.
his will be done. He's like, hey, if we can force the fucking hand, let's do it.
Yeah.
It felt. Because you'll be known by your fruit. So it seems like, I mean, he did cool shit. Like, cool people can do cool shit. But at the end of the day, he was like mad, broke, drug addicted. It's like,
Yeah.
not the best fucking fruit
Yeah,
evidence
it's
thing.
interesting. Like in his book, like 4 Books of Magic, he actually talks about, like, for him, like a more like white magic, or what could we call white magic, seemed like his highest ideal in terms of basically unifying with the will of the holy guardian angel, which was kind of his term for God, or for like your higher self, basically. But I feel like
Like a
when you
Socratic
look at it,
daemon kind of thing, where it's like, all right, my
yeah,
highest self or whatever. Keep going.
yeah,
I
it
didn't
is a
mean to
little.
interrupt you.
It is a little questionable, like, what he was tapping into. But I feel like when you look at his life and you look at, how he ends up kind of doing like animal sacrifice rituals and stuff like this, and like getting addicted to heroin. I mean, I'm not here to judge him. It could happen to anyone, but I feel like there was you can see an element of like kind of a karmic backlash of the type of magic he was engaging in. Maybe his conscious intention was to unify with the capital W will, but there was just a lot of shadow content that got in there. But it just seems like, I don't know, based on the events of his life, that
I feel you
yeah,
on the like
yeah,
not judging it, but you can critique things. I mean, there's a difference. I'm not like
yeah.
he's the worst. I'm just like he played a certain game a certain way, and that resulted in certain results. It seems.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah. So if if you say like I'm the Antichrist or whatever he said, I'm the Beast or whatever. If you start playing with
yeah,
certain archetypes and channeling this stuff,
yeah.
I think there's consequences. Just like if you hold onto an electric wire that's really high voltage, it's like you might lose some fucking hair and skin. Like it is what it
Yeah,
is. You can hope for the best, but it's like Jurassic
yeah,
Park. That kid holds onto the fence. He's like,
yeah,
it's like, well, that's
yeah.
black magic right there, folks.
Well said,
But
man.
you can, but
Really
there's
well
something
said.
there's something to it. So it works, or else people wouldn't be drawn to it. But then I think what starts happening is, I mean, this gets into lots of levels of things. Like, what are we talking to? How do we discern the spirits of the things we're talking to? If it's all one big spirit and it doesn't matter, why does there seem to be like fruit that bears better, more desirable outcomes, I guess you could say,
Hmm.
um, then it's not like, if you just do white magic, you get off the hook. Suffering seems inevitable. And like bad things happen to good people and all sorts of, I mean, it's not just like a straight ahead equation. It doesn't seem. Anyway,
Right.
God, I'm all over the place rambling, but yes, the magician card, we've dipped into it a little. And by the way, for straight up real, like anytime you want to rap, be like, shut up, like mic time, or we could come up with a code like
Ooh, man.
mic check
Yeah, now
1
that you
2,
bring it
mic
up,
check, and I'll be like,
I'll rap. I'll throw out a rap. I'll throw out a rap just to make sure we get one in.
okay, at some point. That was your suggestion.
Yeah, I'll throw it in right now.
Oh shit!
This is gonna be a written verse. I might freestyle at the end. Let's see, but this one just comes to mind. So, yo, on ayahuasca, now I'm seeing visions. The magic is real, man. I see it, I live it. When I get to going, the haters be tripping, and Corey be MJ, and I'm Scottie Pippen. And when I start purging, I really be tripping. We trust the divine, so we never be slipping. I'm feeling like Nas, man, the shit that was written. We 2 kids from Iowa, we be gifted. We smoking mapacho, that's jungle tobacco. Clearing the space, so I burn Palo Santo. My medicine combo, I got flow. I tell them my haters, domo arigato.
Hi. Domo arigato. I love Japanese. Holy shit. Okay, so a lot of psychedelic references in that. What is and that's very magician card energy and Queen of Cups energy. What is your stance right now on psychedelics? I haven't tripped in a few months. I haven't smoked since like last September. I'm not trying to push that onto the people. I'm just like in a weird place myself. I spent like $2,000 on fucking oil, and it's like, maybe this is a bad fruit. Maybe I'm being a little crowley here, and I'm just hooked.
Yeah.
So
cannabis is sticky, man.
oh dude, it's such a good such a good drug, but my God, it's like a fleece blanket. You don't want to stay in the fleece blanket forever. It's like, but it's so comfy.
Yeah.
So what's your what you just spit a whole lot of stuff. So break it down a little. Any part of it? I heard ayahuasca, cambo, I think cannabis.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So on ayahuasca, and I'm seeing visions. Yeah, ayahuasca has been a huge part of my path, and 2018 was the year I came upon it, and it really changed my life. After my first few sets, like I had experienced psychedelics in like a let's go trip in nature, dude, type of context, and more so most of the time, and I'd never experienced like a shamanic healing context with psychedelics.
More intentional.
And that context with ayahuasca specifically just occasioned like a really intense series of portals that I moved through, and experiences seeing myself vaporized to dust, and just the most profound contact with what I would call divinity that I had experienced to that point in my life. And I just basically came out the other side feeling like the past that had previously seemed so three-dimensional and all-encompassing had kind of folded down to like a two-dimensional cardboard cutout and just kind of like fallen away. And I could still relate to it just fine. It's just like the weight of it like dropped away, and probably about 95% of my chronic like guilt and my somewhat less chronic anxiety that had plagued me a lot of my adult life were just washed away in those few days in Costa Rica. And that's not to say I haven't gotten severely triggered at times since then. Even just recently, I'm working through a lot of like pockets of suppressed anger and rage that have been coming up. But that was a life-changing moment for me. And so that album that verse is from came directly out of an ayahuasca retreat that I co-created, and that my homie Corieo came to. He's like a great hip hop producer.
I vaguely remember seeing this on Facebook. I vaguely recall this. I think that's about when I reached out to you, maybe. Although we weren't doing this at that point. I think you came out in 2020. But anyway, I was like, I think I remember this because I've followed you on Facebook.
Cool, yeah. So we dropped this album called Ayahuasca, but spelled IOWASCA because we're both from Iowa. So we were like, somebody's got to do that, ayahuasca. And so we dropped this like silly mystical rap album called Ayahuasca. And so that's where the verse is from. And I mean, I could pick apart every bar and probably talk the entire episode about.
If you want to, feel free. I was just kind of curious. It seemed heavily psychedelic referential. Like it was like that's the driver. I mean, I guess there's cultural references to Scotty and Michael and all this, but it's like, all right, it seemed like.
Yeah, I love the Bulls. Well,
you're from Iowa. It's not terribly shot. It's like, they just had a movie called, I don't know, Air, I guess, drop about the Jordans, the shoe. I mean, the whole story is crazy. If you have it, you probably have. But there's a 30 for 30 ESPN, which isn't like my thing. I'm not a sports buff, but 30 for 30s are usually really good documentaries. And I don't know if it was a 30 for 30, but it's on Netflix. It's a 10 episode thing. I forgot what it's called, but it's about Michael Jordan's whole rise and then the dream team and all this shit. And it's like super compelling. I'll send you a link after this. It's like I
Yeah.
watched it with my nana, and she likes basketball. I guess we're not like basketball heads, and I was like,
Yeah.
almost crying kind of thing. You're just like, this is a fucking event
Yeah.
culturally. This is crazy. What the fuck?
I think I might have seen that. Is it on Netflix?
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
like a documentary on Netflix. Okay, yeah, I watched that, man. That was
Heavy?
that was like that was a warrior activation for me. I was like, that's what I'm loving about tuning into sports these days is like these guys are some of the most like determined, most next level humans in terms of their sheer like will and determination to train and like build themselves up. And so
Magician card
when I
shit.
tune into that, I just feel like whoa, like warrior activation, like it just inspires me to want to like do what needs to be done and just show up with strength and courage and yeah, basically
Power through
just
it and make it work.
power through it. Sometimes you got to do that in life, you know. Sometimes it's effortless flow, and sometimes it's like, oh shit, I got to get out the shovel and start scooping this like shit sandwich that
Yeah.
just landed on my house. Or
Did you
whatever.
play sports?
Yeah. Not too much, honestly.
That's okay.
I kind of, in hindsight, I'm like,
You should have.
yeah. In hindsight, I'm like, yeah, it would have been better to play more sports. I played a lot recreationally with friends, and I played golf in high school. And as a kid, I I played other sports when I was younger, like soccer or
So you fucked
basketball,
around. You weren't just like sitting
baseball,
in the
but
fucking
just
arcade or something.
yeah,
You got out and played
yeah,
around. Yeah, okay. I played football
yeah,
and soccer and all that stuff, but dude, there's a mentality with competitive sports. Football specifically, I played offense. It's like a battle tank. Because what you're saying is it's not
mm,
untrue. I think I've been tapping into this, and maybe this is Aries. Chiron, the wounded healer, right now is in Aries for all of us collectively. It's going to be hitting you personally.
mm,
I mean, you're definitely going through a change for yourself for sure lately. But I've been
mm,
reading Warhammer 40K novels for like the past 6 months, which are in fucking sane. And I don't want to go off that rabbit hole, but it's like tapping into my whole, like what you're saying, like a stoic warrior, masculine, non-toxic mode. Like, how can you be a badass without being toxic, kind of thing?
yeah, like warrior of the
Mm.
heart, like heart-centered warrior, that is just able to channel that energy of we're doing this and let's go.
Yeah, Will, which gets back to Crowley. Crowley was kind of doing that with like, I don't know, like also it's like he was taking the will of sports and then adding like drama pageantry to it, I guess. And that's kind of what magic seems to be, where it's like, I don't know, we've had a master Freemason on, Master Mason DJ guy, and it's like it seems like what they're doing is just enacting astrological kind of dramas and channeling kind of ideas. So anyway, we're talking about the will. It's interesting. So to wrap up, I mean, we could talk about that rap if you want to break it down line for line, feel free, but that's a lot of lines, so don't worry about that. What is you seem to have valued and used, and I'm sure we talked about it the first time you were on here, psychedelics. What's your opinion on them right now? Like they're good tools, but I'm not driving all the time, or like, I mean, I don't want to narc, say what
Yeah,
you want about it,
yeah,
but yeah, how do you feel about
yeah,
those tools?
yeah. No, I'm happy to talk about it. Yeah, actually, what comes to mind, I really resonate with the viewpoint of this shaman who's a dear friend of mine. His name is Remy Delon, and he created this center in Mexico called Kumankaya, which is just like this oasis in the jungle in Kumankaya, amazing center where they're working with ayahuasca and bufo, and also I think combo now, primarily ayahuasca and bufo since I've known them. And yeah, Remy's story is really crazy, but essentially he was a Christian monk for 20 years, living mostly in silence in France, an Orthodox Christian monk. So kind of like a mystic Christian, like Orthodox Christianity is a somewhat more mystical strain of Christianity. So he was sort of like a mystic Christian, not sort of, he was a mystic Christian monk living 20 years mostly in silence, and then mysteriously received a call kind of to the medicine path about 12 years ago, spent about 4.5 years living mostly in isolation with his teacher in Peru, like learning the Shipibo tradition of ayahuasca. He was introduced to us by another shaman as like the most advanced Western shaman I've ever seen. And yeah, he's just a beautiful, beautiful soul, and also hilarious, hilarious trickster, humble guy.
I'm gonna holler at
But
this
his
guy to
view
come
is
on for the
basically,
record. I'm like, oh, I gotta go to Mexico. What the fuck? Okay, or at least have him on the
do it,
podcast.
man.
Keep going
Do
though.
it. Oh man, yeah, get Remy on there. But his view is basically that Christianity is, and in this sense, I don't quite align with him. But let me start with where he's at, and then I'll say how I diverge. So for him, Christianity still remains his religion, and he sees the ayahuasca tradition as like a tradition of healing tools that he has been educated, initiated into. And so he doesn't see a contradiction between kind of the Christian superstructure with utilizing kind of the healing toolkit of ayahuasca. And so, yeah, for me, I would say I view it somewhat similarly. Like I feel like my psychedelics are not a religion for me. They're like useful healing tools, and my like overarching spiritual superstructure kind of transcends and includes that work. And yeah, I'm also like, I would consider myself a mystic who, yeah, is more so is not does not associate himself with a particular organized religion. It's more like, although I do, of all the organized religions these days, I feel um, probably the deepest resonance with Christianity, or at least with the teachings of Christ, because I've had some powerful experiences of just tuning in directly with what feels to me like Christ's energy. And those have been profoundly impactful experiences for me. So I don't consider myself a Christian, although I am a lover of Christ and God. God to me basically refers to the mystery of being itself, just refers to what we call life, nature, just what appears, this that's happening right now. But yeah, I love a lot of other like avatars and saints and saviors too. So I don't have like I don't feel like Jesus is the only way or something like that.
I hear you. Well, it's funny because when you start saying like, because I've played with these ideas a lot, having been raised Judeo-Christian, smoking DMT and talking to Egyptian deities about my faith was an eye opener. Where I was like, if this is just a projection of my fucking like hypothalamus or my id or whatever's going on, it seems important. Then I astral projected once and met quote Christ, and it was interesting and not expected, and I was sober. So it was just like, all right, it seems to be a myth or an archetype that's resonant and important if it's not historically true, and that's kind of where I'm playing with things now. But what was I even going to say? I forgot. I was giving a caveat of why I thought this. Now I've totally spaced on what I was saying.
That's okay. Well, I can jump
yeah.
in and say that.
Rant.
Yeah, I can just say that for me, Christ. Well, one thing that was really interesting for me was disentangling the energy of Christ I was tapping into from the egregore of Christianity. I don't know if you're familiar with the word
Yeah,
egregore.
egregores. Yeah.
Concept. I mean, for people who
It's
don't
like
know, it's
gestalts,
basically
psychic
like
gestalts, basically.
psychic gestalts. Yeah, when people project a lot of psychic energy, thought, intention onto something, it arguably starts to take on its own kind of autonomous gravity, its autonomous momentum. And so I was sensing the egregore of Christianity kind of like trying to hook into me when I started to tune into this Christ energy and watch some like content that was about Christ on the internet, because naturally most all of it is created by Christians. And
Largely.
I feel some of them are much more kind of plugged into the egregore of Christianity, and some of them are more so not so plugged into that, and they're more plugged into the direct energy of Christ. And for me, I would say I hadn't really considered this, but instinctively, I feel like the archetype of Christ, or like the egregore of Christ, would also be a thing. And those would be two different things, the egregore, the archetype. But for me, I would say the fundamental Christ energy for me feels like it transcends even the archetypal level within my metaphysics, and feels like I would place it more in the avatar, or like the meta archetype level. I've never really mapped out this scheme, but it just feels like it transcends that and goes to an even more like a closer place. Like it's literally feels like a face of God, like one of God's faces somehow, if I was gonna try to put it in words.
Succinct. Because I mean, the Egyptian religion, which precedes Judaism, obviously, and stuff, and then Mesopotamians before them, they were playing with these archetypes. So you get like what, like an Osiris, which is like this masculine kind of structuring element, and then Isis, which is the feminine kind of hidden chaos, and then the Horus is the Christ thing. It's like this middle path of the two, or the alchemy of the both. And in a weird way, Horus has to update the maps with Osiris, so it's not like it's like almost like a me and the Father are one kind of like thing going on in Christianity. And I've actually been talking about that recently with my mom. Like, I don't know if it's the record. Like, how would I put it? Is the furniture the same, and we're just putting new wallpaper and fucking tarps on the furniture? Like, it seems like there's structures to these things, and like you're saying, high meta archetypes, and then like where we are in time space tends to dictate the cultural narrative that colors the thing, but that does not dispute the fact that there's something beyond agregorial power, beyond just people like, like, look, enough people believe in fucking the Bulls and Nike or whatever because they all paid attention and they were wowed and they've invested energy, and it's, you see, like, that's what we're talking about. Oh no, maybe I'm back. I don't know. It's horrible. We're here.
You're pretty good. We could hear you the whole time. You just
Oh
started
fuck.
going
Word.
blurry.
All right. Well, I'm ranting. So anytime you can be, I give you permission to be an Aries and totally like chop my ear Peter off, this Peter style. Like just jump in and cut me off
cool.
anytime. I have no complaints about that because I'm just gonna rant.
Yeah, no,
it
it's
seems
a
like
really
there's
interesting.
stuff.
It's an interesting question, man, about whether Christ can be likened to some of these other archetypes that appeared in different mythological stories and kind of played a similar role. Like some people say, the Christ story and the biblical stories are just pieced together from other mythologies.
Mhm.
I view time in a more nonlinear way. So I don't give so much credence to what supposedly happened within linear history. I'm more interested in the synchronistic interweaving of the collective oneness psyche, you could call it, which is just like it's all already here, it's all already happening at the same time. Or from a trans-temporal perspective, it's all like a tapestry that's already just kind of like frozen in time and already contains every possibility. And it's not to say it's all predestined. It also contains the possibility to explore a form of free will or participation along many different kind of possibility trees, but all the possibility trees are already contained within the tapestry, would be the way that I could say it. And so, yeah, as far as that goes from that perspective, to me, I feel like the Christ story and archetype, whatever forms it appears in on earth, like it's it's it doesn't really matter how those got here or when those got here or the supposed history of how those got here. It's more about like when you just tune in directly with the energy that underlies that, what is there. And for me, it's just like, I don't know, it could be my intuitive sense is like what has been called Jesus Christ on planet Earth is not the same as what has been called any other name on planet Earth. Jesus Christ refers to a distinct energy. Some people are probably tapping into the egregore of Jesus Christ, some people the archetype, and others like the meta archetype that I would consider basically like an avatar energy kind of face of God that is particularly heart-centered. It's like an inferno of heart-centered love is kind of how I experience that energy. So
Right, and it seems, and Raphael, jump in anytime. Obviously you weren't raised this way, but I would love your opinions. It seems like, how would I put it? This gets, because you were talking about non-linearity, whereas I'm feeling more or less stuck in the causal nature of the evolution of cultures and psyches, basically.
Mhm.
So it's like it seems like a little
Apparently
feedback loop.
causal, yeah.
Yeah, it seems
Like
like a small feedback loop. At some point, it's like, all right, let's create order, and these are the rules. They're better, 10 Commandments, whatever. It doesn't matter the culture. Hammurabi's code, like whatever. There's like better social fabric keepers, and there's things that will tear the social fabric. As fun as they might be, it's like if everybody was just cannibalizing their children and having orgies, it wouldn't last long. It would be a Crowley camp or whatever. It's like they had a lot of fun, but my God, it wasn't sustainable. So, I mean, it's like Burning Man. You can only do that for a week, probably. It's like after that, it just turns into like Hieronymus
Lord
Bosch
of the
painting or
Flies.
something. Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh my God, there's no structure. Because like I'm saying, the arc. Okay, so it seems, and this is weird. It seems like, and I'm not saying I believe this, but I've contemplated that it seems consciousness has levels. Like there's a trans-temporal layer to things, like you're saying, but there
Mhm,
seems to be the monkey mode development, prefrontal cortex kind of language
mhm.
based thing.
Yeah.
um and it's actually shown really well in Terrence Malick's film Tree of Life. He's a Christian, ironically, but he shows, I guess, compassion, if you want to put it that way, coming on the scene evolutionarily. Some dinosaur has like another dinosaur under its foot, and it's like it chooses not to kill, and that choice is like the birth of the neurons that allow us to have the capacity to understand the vibe of
Mm.
transcendent, like
Mhm, mm,
non-necessary killing, like getting out of the animal fucking mind, or however you want to put it.
mhm. Yeah.
So it seems like there's this ricocheting, like like almost like a feedback loop, where it's like it's like getting louder
Yeah.
and louder, and it
Yeah.
seems like whatever Jesus Christ, Yeshua of Nazareth, or whatever the story is like the loudest iteration of a certain manifestation of our ability as a cultural kind of bound monkey thing to come up with a story, if not historically accurate, archetypally accurate, a painting of the highest good made flesh or something. It's like, look, this is the King of Kings, quote unquote. So whatever attributes a king would have, which is like wisdom and fairness and inclusivity. He's not, it's like all these things that were values basically. And like, certain, it's like, okay, I mean, this is a very Jordan Petersonian kind of approach and a Jungian kind of thing, but it's like you have to have a symbol for the highest good value. It's like yes, there's a top of a pyramid, but then what's the top of all pyramids ever? It's like that is God.
It's also it's really interesting also that Jesus, is like the guy who storms into the temple and like rages and starts like throwing tables over and stuff too, right? So it's interesting how that story and that depiction of the highest good, if that's what it is like,
well, it has revolutionary
including
elements.
those. He's like a revolutionary mystic who's just like basically.
Well, that kicks. I'm going to be sounding like Peterson fucking disciple. I just realized. Sorry if I sound too Petersonian here. But it's like maps have to be updated. So you want the value of the tradition because tradition gives you wisdom. I mean, when we're like, oh, Crowley thought this, it's like we're leaning into his wisdom through his experience or whatever the fuck. These cards mean this. It's like, does it? We're projecting our hopes and fears onto these images and they have aggregors. That's kind of what's happening. So, but it's this paradox, and it seems paradoxical in the Egyptian. If you guys are like, oh, I don't like Jesus and the Christian thing, it's like, all right, well then just look at Egyptians. They had a lower bit rate version of this. It was a lower quality mapping, but the idea is like, look, Osiris is this order thing, and Set is disorder, and he rips him up and chucks his dick, and his wife has to go impregnate herself or whatever. So this is like magical mystery tour thing. But then Horus gets born, and he's the updating of the map. Essentially, it's like the 2.0. It's like, cool, Windows 1.0 is awesome, or fucking Mac OS original is great, but it's like we can improve upon this. So you want the value of tradition because it works. I mean, it was the cutting edge at one point. It ossifies. That's kind of the trip of what you were talking about. Jesus flipping the tables and kind of coming on to the rabbis.
Just to give a reference, because you're only mentioning Mac and Windows.
Oh, Linux. I don't know enough.
Both are ripoffs of usually actually a completely freedom and open source based operating system culture, and then this ossification happened, as you say, and both Mac OS and Windows are
the sold ossified versions. They're the religions of the stolen thought. They're Promethean. They've been stolen from the gods. All right. So okay. I know what I was saying. So tradition has its value. Like usually it's very young, and like I think Ben Franklin was like, if you're young and you're conservative, you're fucking heartless. But if you're old and you're a liberal, you're mindless. Like you can't just be an anarchist who lives in the fucking moment for your impulses and pleasure. It's like if everybody does that, it's going to be a shit show. It's like we have to have old guardism, if you want to put that conservatism, tradition, whatever. And the issue becomes when it ossifies too much. That's the whole point of Jesus coming in and being like, you guys have missed the spirit of the thing because you're keeping the Sabbath so perfectly, but you're missing the point of the rules. Like it's like learning, a rap perfectly, but not feeling it or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like that. It's like, oh, you spit it perfectly, but you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Not you, but as an analogy, right? So it's like I could just when the Black Album came out, Jay-Z's Black Album, I knew it word for word. I could spit it. It's like, but that's not. I'm puppeting it. It's not my experience. I was moved to learn it, but it's like there's a difference between being inspired by the Spirit versus the letter of the law, as they would say. So it seems all this being said, whether you look at Horus and Osiris kind of teaming up to be the cutting edge, tempered by the tradition. I mean, I guess that's what in a sense, that's the best map. It's like, look, we got to expand the map, but don't burn the old map. Kind of thing. It's like, look, you can't get rid of the old because everything's built off of itself. It's this, it's this infinite progression. So it's like, we're not going to be like evolutionarily speaking, and this presupposes obviously Darwinianism to a point. We have hunger built into us. Like you could sit there and be like, I'm going to fast forever, and that's like a spiritual ideal, but it's like your body will die. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Shit, breatharians and all that, like they're all like, I just eat the sun, and it's like, I'd love to see that after 3 years if it's true. Like you're gonna look
it's not about 3 years, but usually that's why, from what I understand, most major religions actually have a fasting month, which even you can actually eat most days, if not even every day. But
Because
from
no
what
one's
I
really
have,
a legalist. We're like, oh, I just want a snack.
no, there is rules for it, but but from what I've read,
Ramadan and
there
stuff.
was one guy called, I believe, Stanley Bass, and there was some other guy when I first researched nutrition, and at least they were credible because those guys were over 90 years old. And from all the patients and people they treated, it appears at least as if most people can actually water fast for at least weeks. And usually it's greatly
There's like health
rejuvenating for the
benefits. Yeah.
body, very much
Yeah.
so.
Much
And even things that you could
ahead of
never
time.
believe you can fix can, repair themselves through that process.
Mm.
Maybe shouldn't go on forever, but for a certain period of time. Let's put it differently. Most
Where we
people
are
would do
now, we need
better
food at some
eating a
point.
bit
Yeah.
less than eating more, especially if they have bad
Yeah.
quality food.
Yeah.
So, but
Well,
yeah.
shit. If we evolve to a place where light body activation and we can eat on the light, like Michael's saying in the comments, everybody's worshiping the sun. It's like, yeah, that's a low resolution kind of like awareness model. It's like, oh, look, the light of awareness and we're safe in the daylight. Yay, praise to that. And then like darkness is weird because the lions attack us and they kill our kids and it's fucking not fun. So, and you trip on the snakes in the dark. Anyway,
I would say, just to
Yeah.
comment on that I'm open to the possibility of people living off of sunlight or living off of pure energy. But I feel like at this stage of evolution, I'd be surprised if it was more than like 1 in a billion or like one, type thing.
Right.
And maybe that hasn't even happened, but it seems feasible. I mean, just in terms of like everything is possible through divinity is my feeling. Like there's nothing that's strictly speaking impossible.
Yeah.
Perhaps unless, I guess this would be my view, perhaps unless the sense that I've gotten before is that all of infinite creation abides basically one rule or like one limitation, which is essentially that it arises from the core part or essence of divinity, and it returns to that essence, and it can't actually, in its most fundamental nature, it all serves divinity or uplifts divinity or celebrates divinity, ultimately, like when seen from kind of the God's eye view. So
It's like God
in
is a
that sense, like,
toroid or something. It's
also,
like
yeah.
it's just vomiting on itself in an infinite number of ways. And the way I've phrased that recently, because this is all very Easterish. I mean, it's not surprising we're talking about this. It's like I don't know. Look, because I'm not
Oh wait, so
dogmatic to the
just to
point
be
where people
clear,
have to believe stuff.
just to be clear, is the Easter story, because I'm really not good on Christian holidays, but that's the story of the resurrection, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But
But
that
Horus did this, and he
also,
had 12 disciples, and all the resurrection
right,
isn't
that's interesting,
fundamentally
but that
new.
also includes the
Unless it's
idea
historically
that
true.
Jesus actually was nailed to the cross and died on the cross and then resurrected 3 days later. Is that correct?
That would be the historical presupposition of that account. Yes.
Okay, no, just because, and this is kind of maybe a bit of a tie-in. I'm not gonna go off all about alternative history and religious views now. We can do that some other time. But just to bring up two basic interesting points, I think, which are also very easily researched. One thing is about a guy called Jesus Barnabas or Barabbas, I think Barnabas. It's even in the official accounts, apparently, that it's a guy with the same name who was supposedly a thief or something. And then it's not perfectly clear whether so-called Jesus Christ of Nazareth, or however you want to call him, was crucified, or whether they actually crucified the thief. So that's one interesting tidbit, let's say. And the
Yeah,
other thing
Barabbas
where
is who you're talking about. But yeah,
Barabbas,
keep
yeah.
going. Yeah, he
And
was the
the other
scapegoat that
thing,
didn't get plugged or whatever. Like, take this guy. But it depends on editors and stories and validation of the historical facts
and
versus
supposedly
culture.
there's
Clearly.
a argument about this, and what this comes down to, and this then reminds me of the story, if you're probably familiar with how would you call it, Krishnaism or Society of Krishna Consciousness, with AC Bhagavan or whatever his name is, and the book they hand around everywhere called the Bhagavad Gita as it is, with his forward and commentary and so on. And I tried reading it, and about 100 pages in, I was like, I cannot take this anymore, because he seems to insert some kind of a splinter of the mind, I would say, where Krishna is somehow raised as the supreme personality of godhood. And this reminds me to the story of Jesus Christ, how it's often interpreted,
Yeah,
which
God
is
made
then
flesh. Kind of thing.
but God's only begotten Son. And before I go any further, I'd love your comments and view on that, Jordan.
Just the fact that Jesus is referred to as God's only begotten Son. that's what you want me to comment on.
Yeah, and what that would entail in your frame of mind or philosophy, whether you agree with
Yeah.
it or how you see that.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. I feel again that the historical Christ, or whatever Christ is codified in whatever stories have survived for a couple thousand years, I feel that those are really, there's a lot of powerful wisdom in there that feels like
Did
it's
he freeze or
connected.
did
No, Jordan
Uh,
is good.
Can you
Jim
hear
is
me?
freezing.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
can hear you. So I kick him, he'll come back. Go on.
Okay, cool. So there's, yeah, I feel there's a lot of wisdom in those stories, and a lot of that wisdom does feel like it's connected to the most kind of primordial Christ heart energy that I would consider the authentic Christ energy. And some of it, especially interpreted in different ways, probably isn't representative of that energy. So for me, it's just I don't I don't get too hung up on what supposedly happened in linear history, or what the Bible or any book says about a particular energy or about divinity. For me, it like direct experience is by far and away the most important piece of the puzzle. So my relationship with Jesus comes down at this point like almost entirely to what my own direct experience of that energy has been. So I still like reading Jesus quotes from the Bible, and sometimes I really find that those seem to be really connected to what that energy transmits. And at the same time, I don't the Bible is far less important to me than just directly tuning into that energy, and directly tuning into the most transcendent form of that energy, which to me is just divinity, or the supreme absolute God, whatever you want to call it. Which I feel, interestingly, if you tuned in deeply enough to any one of us, that is the energy that you eventually get back to. Because for me, it's just the fundamental kind of groundless ground of being that everything is emanating from.
Exactly. I would phrase that as existence itself, or the one, which you previously also, I think, described pretty well, where you said it comes out of it and goes back. I would almost argue it cannot, just as you also said, it cannot really go out of it, but probably if it has to be represented, it would be some kind of hyperdimensional toroid, like Jim said. That's also, from the direct experience and sharings I've had, pretty much the feeling I'm getting from what this whole place kind of is. The point I just wanted to hone in is that it appears to me as if this splinter of the mind and this split between Jesus, for example, as it is often represented as the only begotten Son, or Krishna as supreme personality of Godhood, or any other of these versions, that it actually introduces a, in my view, highly dangerous and obviously very effective and de facto lethal, now I'm throwing myself into a whirl, but this is what happened, portal or opening for religious supremacy. So both in
Yeah,
terms of against other
100%.
supposed
Yeah,
religions, but also
yeah.
within itself, that then I can always appeal to supreme authority through that particular representation.
Yeah.
And the real issue always is, well, oh, he's the Son of God, and you're just cattle or whatever, ultimately, you know.
Well,
Or
it doesn't quite say that.
or
I
you
mean,
can.
yeah.
And what oftentimes this is how it's being used, at least. Or it's like, yeah, sure, you contain a spark of God, but you can never really be like that. Even though, and this almost surprises me, knowing how forged all these religious documents are, I also find whenever I do read Jesus quotes, they're usually, just like you said, the ones that still oftentimes appear most attached to this true compassionate, loving energy, which also includes, if I'm correct, remembering now, quotes like, the works I can do, you can do, and greater.
Better and more.
So,
yeah.
I mean, and then I'm always like, where's the argument, or why are people going off on this? In terms of a portal and an egregore and these densities, I completely agree with you. Just oftentimes it seems it's being used, yeah, in a way for the strange supremacy type games, which are of course great for divine and conquer and organized religions, but most likely completely missing the point of the actual energy to anyone who has any direct experience of it. Yeah.
Totally, man. That's the exact point I tried to make with mentioning the Christian egregore. Is like, when I tuned into that Christian egregore, there was much more of this feeling of elitism, and our way is the only way, and Christ is the only path to God. And that's one of the key ways where I really feel that egregore gets poisoned by human, like you say, a psychological schism, or just a human psychological bias or tendency pollutes kind of the situation there.
So
And
a
just
quick
to
question
give
to this point, but
just
Raphael, finish your thing.
one definition, which may you may also find that, Credo, which maybe help you to map it. When I thought about Jesus and also some other of these archetypes in terms of the energy they represent, was that also actually Jesus may be the overall term, in a sense, for almost any, I would have said, positively polarized fourth density plus energy. I'm not even speculating now about what energy this level actually is on, and ultimately it's on the highest level as well, like everything else. But that in many cases, this may be seen as a generic, let's say a generic portal. And then too often times people get
They
stuck
take it too seriously.
they get stuck on the names, or then they're like, no,
Sure.
but this prophet better than this or something. But actually oftentimes what is meant is just this portal, which you can represent with any face you actually want. But if you access it with honesty and pure intention, you all get to the same place. And there is actually nothing, and no one, I'm now claiming, who actually does this would then come back and argue and say, oh, I have to do it like this or like this, because if it exists, it's created by God. So what do you want, But yeah.
So there's a few ways I want to approach this with. We tend to presuppose everybody's as smart as we are, and I dare I say we're fairly intellectual monkeys here in this chat. I read somewhere there's like 20% of people don't even finish fucking books. They're just like, I don't want to deal with this. Like they're not jamming on all cylinders. So I think there's a whole spectrum of like cultural participation where, not everybody watching this fucking Super Bowl participates at the same level. Some people are playing the game. Some people are investors. Some people are fanatics for a team. Some people
I
watch
would
for the
also
game.
say though that probably a lot of the wisest humans who ever lived didn't know how to
retarded people
read.
are probably, or mongoloid or however you want to call it, like handicapped mentally. People have access to a level of dimensionality that is grace. Like it's in a strange sense, it's like by, for, and through grace, and then we filter through these egos in such weird ways. So I'm not just saying, oh my gosh, the smartest monkeys rule. That's kind of a 20th century Third Reich presupposition. I mean, Germany did their thing for good reason. You could see why they did it. It's like, oh, we made Beethoven and all this crazy shit. We're the best. Let's just keep going with that. And it's like, oh, well, okay, but maybe that's not the true answer. It's not the kindest, compassionate answer. It was very not Christ-like. Christ was hanging out with like the losers and the whores and the fucking cripples, not just looking for the athlete, blonde hair, blue eyes only, or whatever, right? So anyway, no shame on Germany. You guys have your own karma, I guess. But in any event,
Yeah, I mean, I'm
it
not
gets
German.
tricky.
Yeah,
You're
I'm
just
chilling.
there. Hopefully you don't get in trouble for this. I always harp on the Germans. I just had a kid who was Jewish who was in my class growing up, and I posted this funny meme of like, it was a reverse meme of Eric Andre shooting Hannibal Buress. Usually it's like, oh, where'd all the other sentient species go? And Homo sapiens kills it. It's like, well, I don't know. But it was like Jesus rising from the dead and the Jews. And he's like, that was so anti-Semitic. And I was like, no, it's not. And it's like, no, I give Germany a lot more shit than Jews. But any event, my point is this, if there is a point. So let's presuppose we just have to realize there's a spectrum of comprehensibility within the witnesses. I would like to have this idealized, kind of spiritualized, we're all the image of God thing, but for better or worse, it's a little animal farmish down here. It's like some animals are more equal than others, but it's like there is a spectrum of ability. You don't want to base everything on that, but it's like, some people are more athletic and some people aren't, and you can influence that a little. Magic card, magician card. Okay, so that's one thing. So when I hear religious stuff, it's like, dude, they had to put up fucking pictures on the refrigerator to celebrate something for a culture to look at. Like the least among them had to get these stories, right? So whether they're true historically or not, I was talking to my nana the other day. I was like, I feel like the really wise is a strange word, but the most spiritually woke, I guess, person doesn't necessarily need the dictates of a cultural religion the same way as somebody who's like an imbecile, spiritually speaking, which is fine because we all do that. We all fuck up and have blind spots. So I'm not like being elitist about it, but it's like some people are just like, oh, they'll kill people if you don't tell them not to murder.
Yeah, twice now you reminded me actually of this Lao Tzu quote that like really captures well what you're saying, which is he says something like, when the Tao is lost, you get religion. When religion is lost, when the Tao is lost, you get goodness. When goodness is lost, you get morality. When morality is lost, you get religion. When religion is lost, you get ritual. And when ritual is lost, you get like
politics,
rote behavior, which is the husk of true faith, he says. And so yeah, he really breaks down in like, one little verse breaks down this really interesting kind of model of how things decline as you get away from the direct revelatory experience of the Tao or God Supreme, whatever you want to call it. And also, can I possibly run to pee and come back, guys?
Yeah.
I took a pee super bad.
So let's how would I put this? Let's just say some people are being very Christ-like without even ever hearing the Bible or something like that. It's like they're just in tune. One would suppose that like they're just like, oh, they're kind naturally, and they for whether they're evolved purposes this has happened or chosen purposes, like, oh, I'm a good spirit this go round, or it seems there's a spectrum of behavior, because what starts happening, what I wanted to ask him, and I guess I'll repeat it when he gets back, it's like it seems that we would say, how would I put it? Like we have dominance hierarchies. This is very Jordan Petersonian, but it's like we have value hierarchies. Like not every value is the same, even though we kind of whitewash it with this new age kind of thing where it's like it's all good. It's like that's the highest resolution of the map. It's like the art piece is great, but your eye is attracted to color more than black and white or whatever. Right. So it's like we prefer certain things over certain things. And it's not always just arbitrary preference. It's like, well, I just love cotton candy and you love apples and we're just going to both be healthy. It's like there's consequences to poor choices and poor preferences, which would mean there seems to be a moral reality, like there's good and evil. So it's like if I only eat human flesh, maybe that diet isn't the same as a breatharian or a vegetarian or even a
Just
McDonald's
to make the
fan.
point, isn't Jordan Peterson only eating meat these days?
Yeah, and I think he's turning more orange because of it, and I think he's getting more hostile because he's feeding his hypothalamus and his like reptilian brain. But these are my projections of assumptions. Like I don't know.
But
I
also
can't be like,
interesting.
yeah,
And I'm
he's
not
turning into
surprised he's
Bowser.
talking. I'm not surprised he's talking about dominance hierarchies in that case, you know.
Well, but they're kind of irrefutable. It seems. I mean, even animals do this, right? I mean, this gets crazy. He's talking about like, look, maybe the picture of a like, okay, so like on the Serengeti, right? There's a bunch of fucking deer, and because we're all in the Darwinian model, it's like we're all kind of coming from the same origins and sprouting out like a tree or whatever. So we could say there's part of our mind or culture or whatever that was African Serengeti plains, herbivore style. Point is this. So what is the sacrificial lamb? What is this idea? It's like, oh, the one sacrifice for the many. It's this valued ideal. I mean, we tend to think that. It's like, oh, Saving Private Ryan or Braveheart or any of these movies where it's like somebody sacrifices something for something more than themselves. We tend to value that culturally for probably reasons, and it could be as little as a material secularist reductionism where it's like, look, there's a pack of us animals and there's a fucking predator and they're going to kill one of us, and now that they're eating that animal, they're not after all of us. So we sit there and watch it get devoured and we go, that thing sacrificed itself for us at some weird biological level, and that kind of idea kicks and kicks and kicks forever until we get to this
all I
place where
want
it's
to
like
say is
altruism. Yeah.
I mean, altruism is a thing unto itself, and doing something that fulfills you in terms of your purpose, if you feel you have spiritual alignment or especially believe in reincarnation, I think that makes great sense and is easier to accomplish than from a purely hyper-materialistic viewpoint. But what I'd like to point out is we discussed dark crystal. What is it called? Dark Crystal. I want to say New Age, but that's not the name. Age of Resistance. Yeah, Age of Resistance. Yeah,
Flip
that's
the
also a
tables,
good title.
man.
No,
Take out
but
these
that this
reptilians.
behavior, and also the most likely subconscious denial of it is highly ingrained in the society and highly problematic, I would argue, because these processes are actually happening left and right unnecessarily to still feed some kind of predator, which we're really not dependent upon. That's what I see. Whether we see that as real people dying, whether we see that financially, culturally, whatever. So there is, let's say, I would say, a good sacrum officium or holy work, or however, if we want to try Latin. But there is also a completely misguided version of that, which often is what organized religion and politics is leading people to.
Or it tends to be the sock puppet of the real like ethos of the thing. So it's funny because you said
what
like
is the Age of Resistance, real quick?
Dude, on Netflix. I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but Jim Henson came up with Dark Crystal, which is this crazy kind of fantasy world thing, and then they came out with a 10-episode series, which we've done an episode on, called Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance, and it's talking about sucking the life force out of people and subjugation. And there's like these reptilian kind of Skeksis versus elves, and it's kind of this like ideological.
And the thing is that the Gelflings, so the common folk, they also, I think, for a time, they don't want to believe this is happening. They don't want to believe that the people who are managing them are actually literally feeding on them in a really ugly way. And yeah, I think it describes the current situation really well.
Yeah.
Yes, but it describes the situation very well.
They are completely unaware. And then one guy sees his like girlfriend get fucking soul sucked or whatever, and he's like, fuck, and he starts this revolution because it's like, hey, maybe the fucking czars aren't for us or whatever, like that kind of revolutionary vibe. But here's one thing I'll just say.
One point on that,
Okay,
if
go
I
ahead.
can jump in,
Yeah,
is
anytime.
that I think it's this kind of idea of like some kind of predator or like 5D controllers or beings or parasites or demons or something. And even if you just take it as a metaphor, like Raphael was saying, for the elite class or the top of the pyramid when it comes to the global system, I think it's a really powerful idea that has a lot of resonance for me too on different levels. Although one point I would make that's interesting about that idea is that I feel like the more close up you're getting to that idea, the more you're zooming in on that idea and focusing on it, and the more it's kind of becoming an all-encompassing reality tunnel for you.
It's like, what
in
about loving your
itself,
enemies?
the reality tunnel of that idea in itself is parasitic and is actually
Correct.
hooking into your own kind of like
Looshing off of you.
wounding, I would say, to draw you into this ominous reality tunnel. So that's just something to be aware of when it comes to like tuning into that type of egregore. It's like it's a resonant idea. It's cool, but it's also like very sticky. So
well, it's like the truth of the matter is power structures can be corrupted and abuse that power, but that does not make power structures inherently evil. So we've got to be tricky with it. I mean, it's like people fucking, Joffrey in Game of Thrones is choosing to be an asshole, where Ned Stark, had he been on the throne and king of Game of Thrones guy, he was a nice guy. They would have both been the head of the game on the throne, or the top of the dominance hierarchy, but one's character starts playing out into it. And the character of the Skeksis is selfish, ambitious, they're cutthroat, they kill each other. I mean, it's like shadow stuff. Because if you get to the higher level, you start going, I mean, in a Christian sense, it's like, I have to love my enemy. So even it gets tricky because it's like, how do you love your oppressor? How do you love? How do you deal with someone who's like,
Well, he loved them by healing them of their needs, their inner voids, and their need to feel that they need to control other people, which is,
okay. Well, so here, I'll just say this really quickly, and then we can talk about anything or keep talking about this stuff. But it's funny because when someone says, and it's like a cultural, like anti-patriarchal thing, and that's why I think the Peterson kind of ideas are important, because typically liberal-minded people are like, fuck the system and stuff. And it's like, it's very the new boss, same as the old boss. It's still very much ideologically power drives, basically. Nietzsche would, everyone's just like willing for power. So it's like the feminists aren't being not feminine, they're being masculine in a new form or something like that. It's like, okay, it's not it's not the middle path here. They're just being equal opposites or something like that. It's like castrate everybody. It's like, that's just as fascist as a fascist. What do you become what you hated? What have you done, Saruman? You've traded your whiteness for fucking multicolors. Anyway, the point is, there's dominant hierarchies within culture, which are tricky things, but then you see it in nature. Like I was saying, like the weakest do tend to get picked off in, like large herbivore groups. When there's like a lion or whatever gets a gazelle, it's like the one that's not the fittest athletically or savvy mentally enough or oldest, it's like the weak links get pulled off usually. And it's like, that's just the way it goes. Or if you want to even be less like anthropomorphic zoologically, plants pursue sunlight. I mean, that's a value to them. I mean, it's life-giving. They're like, I'm going to grow this way because that's the source and I need that shit. So it's not a moral thing. It's not like we wouldn't say, oh my God, they're being revolutionary.
I love Jordan Peterson, for the record. Yeah.
Oh, he's dope, but he's crazy too.
Jordan Peterson. Like, I'd say, he's got his shadows like anybody, but
he eats only meat, bro. It's like, I don't know if I can't jam on this frequency. I'm a vegan, so it's like, but he's trying well. I think he's trying well, and that's all we can do. It's like, he's taking shit seriously, and it's easy to just see. It's either true or it's not, that it's all one big thing at the end. And I think it is, but how we get to that place can be like a very lazy, naive kind of positive nihilism, or it can be thoughtful about it. And I guess they both end up at the same place. I just posted a meme the other day where it's like an axe in the target backwards, like when you throw axes, and it's, the axe is backwards, but it's bullseye, and it's some math problem below that. And the teacher's like, you used the wrong equation to get this answer, but it's the correct answer. I don't know what you did. And it's like, grace is hilarious because it's all by, for, and to grace. It starts in grace, or God, however you put it. It emanates and it plays around. So it's whatever's happening, and then it returns to that grace. It's all a gift. And I think that's kind of what you were saying originally at the place, where it's like, it's fun to be a magician and play with my will. And, oh my God, I want to, because consumerism is so powerful. We think we really and reality's
Actually,
magical.
can I jump
yeah.
in on this? There's
Anytime,
I
Ed.
think
It's complicated.
okay. Yeah,
These are rabbit holes. Now you know. Team rabbit hole.
I'm not the most interrupting type of personality.
I give you
usually,
permission. I do it
yeah,
horribly.
yeah. Fair
you
enough.
have my
All right.
blessing. Cut me off.
I'm gonna flex my inner asshole and try to bring in more of the healthy
Shove me
expression of
over.
of the jerk archetype, the direct archetype. But
Word.
yeah, what I wanted to say about that was essentially that I had an interesting moment lately where so I wrote a book like late 2020 called "You Are God," just very flat out like "You Are God." It was a heavily like Bufo 5-MeO DMT influenced transmission, and I
That
feel like it has
telling.
a lot of good stuff going for it. It's like a potent kind of espresso shot of mystical wisdom. However, I recently wrote a blog post called "You Are Not God," kind of following up on that and critiquing that and counterbalancing it because I came to feel like the kind of form of non-duality that I was embracing at that time had some shadow spots that I couldn't see at the time, which essentially like when you start equating yourself with God in a one-to-one fashion,
It's tricky shit.
you're like, I am that, there's a lack of nuance there. And it easily, if there's any germ of ego present, which there's going to be with like basically every human who ever lived, it's very easy for the ego to start to hook onto that and become inflated and become grandiose and start to develop guru complex, messiah complex, God complex,
like spiritual narcissism
and also
at worst. It's like it's all about me.
Yeah, and to get fantasies of unlimited reality creation power, basically fantasies of being the unlimited magician, or even beyond the magician, fantasies of being a god who can just literally create the reality that they want completely. And I was kind of in that camp too with that book "You Are God." I was saying like, you are literally the creator of the universe. You can literally create whatever reality you want. And I've had to, through being very humbled, I've reached a place of being like, okay, pride cometh before a fall. I was really inflated there, and essentially I now feels more accurate to call myself a child of God or a flowering of God, of that same one energy. And yet I am not the realized totality of God in my present form. It's like no.
Yeah.
For one, just psychologically, that just doesn't work. The ego needs a transcendent other onto which to project its most grandiose energies, or else those just get looped back on itself in this feedback loop that is ultimately leads to mania, leads to other types of mental disorders. And that's where religion actually has a lot of wisdom in it, because they understood that in some ancient way.
It puts
they
a
realized
ceiling on that. It's like,
people need a transcendent other. People need a transcendent other, and they need to recognize a certain amount of difference from that transcendent other to be psychologically healthy
and functional.
Unless there's like a profound degree of attainment or realization, then maybe a person can more and more just completely identify with that energy. But I feel like maybe like the Ramana Maharshis or something can do that, or the Nisargadatas, and just be like, I am that, and kind of not become inflated from it. But in general, I feel like the vast majority of people, that's a very easy trap to fall into. So I would caution against that. Although, I'm grateful for it too, as part of my trip and as part of how I arrived.
It might be the ultimate truth. I mean, we might be God witnessing itself or whatever, but to play that card that early in the game is like tricky. I mean, like you're saying, there's a whole lot of fucking damaged goods on this side of fucking being a creature.
Ultimately, we are exactly all of that. However, just as you pointed out, if one is not completely clear about what that really means,
and is. I don't think anybody is. Everybody's hanging up on something. It's like, oh God,
I don't know. I chose myself to be limited enough not to know what state everyone is in exactly at this moment. So I don't know that. However,
how
so
can you
just
prove
like
you
said,
chose it? I've always wondered that. Like when you say I presuppose that I chose this, it's like, is that not wish fulfillment thinking at a spiritual ego level in a weird way? Like that's material consumerism with spiritual wrapping. It's like, I chose this product and I love it. It's like, I don't know if I would have chosen this. My God, my trip is fucking gnarly. And if I could, even Jesus was like, God, do I have to do this? Fine, your will be done. It's like, my will is not fully being done here as far as I'm consciously aware.
Of course, as far as you're consciously aware, and that's for me also the other interesting part where we could talk about, value preference and effective reality creation, or how to have a preferable ride, let's say. I like to differentiate with the terms of lesser magic and greater magic. And actually, to what I have come to process is that the magician's magic actually is the lesser magic, because it has to be willed specifically. and it always has these issues attached, just like you mentioned. And the greater magic actually would be very close to just gratitude, which is more of a definition in the moment and a immediate thing which has no real causality or anything, and can just also be really truly be chosen in any moment. And that actually may ultimately, let's say, quote unquote, yield better results. Yeah. So that's yeah.
Beautifully said, man. Thanks for making that point, because yeah, I feel I don't want the word magic to get a bad rep. I feel like it's kind of tricky to talk about this because some people associate a lot of things with that paradigm, but I feel like you're saying that that would be an equally valid semantic analysis of the situation, is basically to say like that what I'm speaking to, this kind of paradigm of prayerfulness, you could also call it like white magic, or you know, I don't know, whatever you could just call it magic. Like words are to some extent arbitrary. So
Well, it seems like what
yeah.
you're talking about is like positive other awareness. And usually what happens is, I mean, it's like Lord of the Rings. The guy's like, they're all wizards, right? Gandalf's a fucking wizard, and he's a high up there in the fucking echelon of things because he's one of these he's like, he and Galadriel are like keepers of the flame and all, you know, it's like, whatever, they're initiated, they're way up there or whatever they're doing. But Saruman is like fucking around in his fucking garage, hanging out, watching all these YouTube tutorials about how to fucking summon demons or whatever it is. And Gandalf's like, you've given up your wisdom for the folly of the trick. You're playing tricks on yourself. I mean, your ego is now embroiled, and it gets tricky because this gets into definition of terms. It's like perception itself is a magical thing. The fact that we're talking through the internet right now in different parts of the world, that is something to be grateful for at the very least. But it is a performative act of will through technology. It's magic. Language is magic. But then what starts happening is, I guess, and I'm not like, you know, some people, how would I put it? Like, where's the limits? This is why defining terms is so tricky. It's like DNA is fucking magic. It's information, and it possesses you and shoves you through time space. That's crazy. But I wouldn't go as far as saying I programmed my DNA consciously. I mean, maybe at some point hey, maybe we die and we go, oh shit, I was behind the scenes the whole time pulling
I'm
my
gonna
strings. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say on that point, like, did I choose this or not? I would probably answer both, neither, far beyond either. Like, I feel like it feels like there's a level at which I, in some sense, chose this, or some aspect of my essence chose this. It feels like there's another level where this was completely
Improvised.
beyond my control. It feels like neither of those is true. They're both too simplistic, and it feels like the truth is just way beyond that. I mean, if you go to the trans-temporal level again and just see all this as like an instantaneous, simultaneous emanation, then there's no room for a linearly time-bound choice in there at all. So that's more like the more absolute level, you could call it, like, would be my view on that. Yeah.
And yet here we are perceiving fucking time space as beings within creation. It's a trip. I mean, this is why we talk about this shit. It's like, what the fuck? Why do I suffer? Why do I even notice
fucking
time?
awesome, man.
I mean, it's the most beautiful.
I'll try to answer that one. I'll try to answer that one. I feel like, so yeah, for one, it's a trip being here. Fuck, man. Like, you know, I love Terence McKenna's quote, astonishment is the proper response to reality, because yeah, man, like, where the fuck are we? I don't know what any of this is. I don't know how it got here. The question of why we suffer, I just feel like, man, if it was an eternity of just kumbaya,
it'd be boring.
Circles, holding hands, and just feeling peace and joy, it would be like, yeah, it would be way more boring than this kind of undulating roller coaster of hyper Shakespearean tragic comic melodrama that we're embroiled in. It's like way 1,000 billion trillion infinite times more complex and nuanced and intricate, because of the addition of these different dynamisms and these different like weather patterns and storm clouds. And you can't even reduce them to like suffering and non-suffering, or like good and bad. Ultimately, it's just like numberless shades of ambiguous texture all interacting in the most unsayable way. And it's just so utterly poetic and like a gorgeous painting if you like zoom out and look at it. And then I feel like that's where the suffering makes more sense, especially when you start to see the qualities that it allows you to bring forth in yourself through that process of resilience. Through resilience, you like build through going through the muck and climbing, sledging through it. That's how you really like embody the hero archetype and embody the warrior archetype, those aspects of bravery, courage, strength, heart open, compassion, and just a single pointed willingness, let's say, a single pointed willingness to surrender in the direction of the North Star, which for me, ultimately, like the true North Star is what cannot be said. It is that transcendent energy that you could call love, you could call God, but it goes beyond those words. So yeah, that's my rant
No, I love
on
it.
that one.
Fucking make a rap out of that shit. No, it's funny because I've been listening to a bunch of Terrence McKenna and Rupert Sheldrake and Ralph Abram doing trilogues. And it's funny because in light of Peterson, I'm like, their thinking isn't as clear as it could be. I mean, they tend to be very petulant and reactive to conservatism, and it's like it's weird. It has its place. It's like order is a thing. Like you don't want just pure chaos, even though fundamentally we're starting to think, I guess, at a quantum level, it's just a soup of potential. It seems to have habituation, habit, and like consistency. I mean, I don't just pop my head out, and it's not just like like Raphael's seen the movie. It's pretty good if you haven't seen it. La Congress. It's like it gets more and more psychedelic, basically. But it's like there's a continuity to the dream, but there's enough weirdness to make us question it. Total certainty. There's like no certainty, but it's like it's consistent.
One thing I just want to throw in on this point,
Mhm.
I'm gonna take my role as the interrupter here
Do it.
and just say that one really trippy thought is that like I feel like these yin and yang pairs, like order and chaos, I feel like there's an infinite number of them. They're all basically like lenses you
Wheels
can look
within
at reality
wheels, dare we
through.
say?
And if you look through that lens, reality looks like that, and it can present itself in that fashion, and it resonates, and you learn a lot through that lens. But then you could switch it out for like love and power, for example, and use that as a yin and yang to see everything through, or switch it out for masculine and feminine. And essentially, there's like truth in every single one of those lenses, and there's like stuff to learn from all of them. But I like wouldn't recommend to get over fixated on order and chaos or any particular pair. It's more, I would say it's like more fun to swap out different ones and kind of see what you learn from different ones, and then actually go to like what the frameless frame, like what transcends any of these kind of dualistic lenses through which reality can be seen, and just get closer to kind of the numberless shades of ambiguous texture and just like the pure radiance that cannot be said at all, because that's where it like permeates the deepest, and there's really, it could just like clean you out. It just starts like guiding you and cleaning you basically when you just tune into the numberless shades of ambiguous texture that present as this radiant presence that cannot be said at all, pure indefinability. So that would be
And that might be
something
perceptive.
cool to try on weekends.
Yeah,
for
no, it's
anybody who
beautiful.
wants to.
And that non-dualism is what you're talking about. Basically, it's like, look, the yin and yang is
I
a
wouldn't
symbol.
call it non-dualism.
What would you call it?
I wouldn't put it
Tao.
under the branch of an ism. I'm talking about like direct inquiry into the nature of immediate experience. Let's put it that way.
Sorry, I just had a spider hop onto me. I was like, "What the fuck? There's two
That's
hopping
awesome.
spiders."
What does the spider archetype signify?
Arachne and webs of deception. Spiders weave not their webs here. Who knows? So it's funny because I mean
I'm
it's
a
tricky.
sophist.
It's like okay, so like just using it as an example, I don't disagree because what you're talking about is like when you say lenses, like we structure our reality through preferential value systems, I guess. So what you find to be the most valuable, whether it's will to power. Some people are like, I want to control things. Some people are like, I want the most comfortable reality. Some people are like, I want truth. Like I'm at a point where it's like, I don't care what it is, show me truth. Like I want to know truth, and that's hard to know. Like it's when I die, maybe, or something like that. But it's like I don't know if I'm going to see it on the flip side of this thing, because it seems like what you're saying, it's wheels within wheels within wheels. It's a house of many mansions. It's a multi-dimensional fucking multi-tiered fucking Muppet movie, and it's nuts. And it's like anything you zoom in on becomes the main character, but then if you zoom out, that was just a sideshow of another thing, and it's within itself.
I like what you said at the beginning when you said certainty is an illusion.
But am I certain of that? Jesus Christ. I'm a paradox.
I think that quote actually points for me at like the kind of meta nature of that multidimensional clusterfuck that about. The meta nature is this unresolvability or indefinability. That's like what is referred to or meant by the Buddhist term emptiness. It points at the absolute unpinned down ability, indefinability, unresolvability of any aspect of reality. It can never be pinned down. And so that's a recommendation I can give, is like try tuning into that quality and as like a just foundational portal. I'm not saying that like the essence of it can't really be said, but if you tune into that as a portal, you might find yourself then just like swimming in what I would call like just the living truth of just realizing that the only truth there is that this now is here, and it is as it is, and you can't say anything about it. And it's just, and yet it's like it's all a living organism. It's intelligent, it loves itself, it's all embracing, it's infinite, it generates, it can never be quantified or measured, it generates new iterations of itself continuously. It's overflowing with possibility, infinite possibility. So you can say some things about it, but these don't ultimately capture it. Because the
Correct.
really core thing is just that it is like a kaleidoscopic, a like infinite dimensional kaleidoscopic Rorschach blot that is just fractaling and just cycling, and just like you can never pin it down, and yet you can directly tune into that quality of it and tune into other qualities of it that just align you with the recognition that, oh, the truth is just the fact that this is here and that no one can say anything about it, and yet that it's like it's what we are, and it's home, and it's we can trust it, and
A rose is a
and
rose
that's
by
really
any other
that,
name. Yeah, I mean it's happening.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
that's what I would say.
but
You
so
know,
how do
who
you
am I?
look
I'm
at
just
willpower and
another monkey,
ambition
but
and like
yeah.
desire and
So
preference,
new
even in
new
Raphael's
rap
model?
song
How do you look at this?
title is "No One Can Say Anything About It." I think you
I
should
think
make
I
a
think
song
Lao Tzu
about
has the
that.
corner on that market. He's like, that which can be talked about isn't the thing, man. Talk about the biggest cop out. It's like if you can
Wait.
label it, it's not it. It's like, okay, well, Jesus fucking Christ, we're labeling machines genetically speaking. Everything is labelable. How do we do this?
Yeah, you got to go beyond the labels, though. Got to go beyond the
But they seem
descriptions for
functionally
sure. That's
necessary.
where,
So it's like
yeah,
night is not
yeah,
dead,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or at least we're at a
Everything is,
it seems like we're
yeah,
at a
everything's flowing
perceptive
perfectly. Uh,
like evolution of perception. So like before, I'm not sure how this works, but before the Renaissance, people did not see depth the same way. They like there's it was flat, two-dimensional characters. Like they weren't able to process the perceptual reality of three dimensions in art for whatever reason.
mm,
And then at the
mm-hmm,
Renaissance, we kicked into a gear and our monkey fucking brain said, hey, you know what? If we do something called perspective,
mm,
it really shows it a little more accurately. And it seems like we're getting there
mm,
with language and culture and human mind and AI and all this
mm,
craziness that's
mm,
going on. It's like we're
mm.
we're obsessed with talking about duality. Okay, duality is not that's like
We're not
antagonistic.
even close. I'll just break in and say
Yeah.
that we're not even close, and we won't get there.
Shit.
I'll
Spoiler.
throw that out there. We're not even close. We're light years away, infinite light years away, and we won't get there. No, the most sophisticated language of like a million dimensional nature, like a eighth, ninth, 12th, 100,000th dimensional language that was the most sophisticated, nuanced thing you could ever invent, could not come close to saying what this is. I would go that far myself. Like no sequence of the most exquisite hyperdimensional hieroglyphs could possibly pin down what this is.
And yet here we are
Way
trying to
beyond that.
experience it. How do we do it responsibly,
Hey, it's
right? It's like,
so
okay, if I'm
fun.
not
It's so
supposed to talk
fun. What
about it,
else is
how
there
do I
to do?
participate with it? It gets tricky. I'm a
Yeah,
Gemini, so it's like I want to talk
and
about it linguistically or ideologically or whatever.
yeah, me too, man. And to your other point, like, what do I feel about will and preferences?
Yeah.
Like your other question, like I said earlier, I feel like there is this participatory power that we have. We have a measure of free will, and ultimately, like, again, if you ask me, like, is it free will or determinism, again, my answer is going to be both, neither, far beyond either. I feel like that koan really beautifully answers pretty much every this or that question you can ask metaphysically. I feel like that points at the ultimate truth beautifully, and all inclusive and all negating, because everything is true, everything is false, and everything is just way the fuck beyond true and false. And the actual essence of it is just something that must be directly experienced, revealed, and felt. And so, but we have this beautiful ability to seemingly participate. And what I would say is, participation is fun, it's groovy, it's amazing, enjoy it, it's fucking awesome. What I've learned, though, is like, for myself, I first and foremost am like praying for guidance as far as like what is God's plan,
What's the
aka
highest
what
good
is my
here? Yeah.
what does my divine essence want to do here? And then if the divine essence seems to very clearly indicate, like, yes, you are meant to be rapping, then and you're meant to just rap very freely, then it's like, okay, I'm fucking throwing all my participatory power into, this funky rhyme. Or if God seems to indicate, like, yeah, you're supposed to create this brotherhood for men's work, and I get that strong signal, then it's like, okay, I'm going to dig in and I'm going to message 90 men right now, like I did in the past few weeks. And that was a major act of will to like directly reach out to 90 men about this creation. So I will exert my will when it seems very clearly to be in alignment with what God is indicating. So that's kind of my approach.
Don't you think everybody feels that? Don't you think Adolf Hitler was like, I'm doing the right thing? Like, I
Yeah,
mean, it's
yeah, yeah,
tricky.
totally, totally,
And then we
totally,
would
man.
say that's
It's
not
totally
preferred
tricky.
for
Yeah.
most people, so it's evil. And then but in some, it's almost positive nihilism where it's like it
And then
doesn't
also
matter
here, let me just add,
ultimately.
there is a cultural element. These things do not happen in isolation, neither culturally, financially, nor usually not devoid of the involvement of different types of occult magic societies, which are then, tuning into certain directions. So I just like to point that out, that this is not also this maybe individual feeling of what divine will may also be a partially cultural phenomenon or educational result,
And a perceptual
Hmm.
trip. I mean, like Disney is making everyone think follow your fucking heart, and there's a value and a beauty to that, but that does not mean it's fully encapsulating absolute. It's tricky. I mean, it's like what? Okay,
especially
I
if you
just want to
have
eat
no
Twinks.
connection to your heart.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Say
Or
it
it's like, what if
depends
I want to
on.
eat Twinkies all day? My heart really tells me to do that. It's like,
It depends on what is meant by heart, basically, and yeah, how connected to your heart you are. Because I feel like your heart of hearts is as good a term as any for your divine essence, or for that deep, like plugged in, like where you
ayahuasca
just
self.
know. There's just a knowing in your heart of hearts that, like, yes, this is the path for me. This is my natural flowering. This is what I'm meant to be doing. I am in my element, and I can feel it, and I can just feel that this is what I'm meant to be doing, and ultimately, yeah, a lot of people have probably felt that way, or generated versions of that then ultimately ended up doing unskillful things. So there's an element of, yeah, it would also be less interesting if you knew absolutely for sure that you were 100% on the right path. It requires an element of faith where you're like, okay, I deeply feel
Yeah.
this, and so I'm going to have faith in what I deeply feel. And that's the opposite of what our school systems teach us to do. Essentially, most of the Western public education systems basically teach people to be totally disconnected from their heart of hearts and what they deeply feel, and to essentially just learn to ignore their deepest intuitions and creative drives, their unique genius, what makes them like a unique flowering of the one sun. And instead it just basically conditions them to be broken down into conformist drones who are really good at obeying authority and following orders. And that's fine too. That's all part of the poetry as well. Although in general, I feel it would be more skillful and beautiful as a civilization if we started developing education systems that were far more kind of
Nuanced.
advanced than
Maybe
More
our current
nuanced.
one, I would
just to
say.
analog one simple idea is, the lack in current school systems, aside from, as Jim said, many schools were apparently designed by, or prison architects, I want to say. Anyhow, that's a old world history
Child
connection.
prisons, man. Child prisons. I
That's
call them that
well,
sometimes, like
that's
only half tongue in cheek.
well,
But
that's
yeah.
the other point. But then actually, what is usually lacking is a direct experience. You're sitting in a class in an
Yeah.
artificial environment. You don't get any tools. You
Yeah.
don't get to talk to anyone. You have to digest whatever the teacher is throwing at you, and it's just the same then with the spiritual system. You don't get direct experience. Maybe today you get some bad wine and whatever piece of cake they give you in Christian church, or whatever this, I don't know how you call it, in this cracker or some cracker
Communion?
which they give you. Yeah, this thing.
Eucharist?
But you definitely, I mean, maybe in a gospel church, at least when you're singing, or if they have a really good organ, maybe you get to feel something, but also this can be tuned and used in certain ways. I just recently heard this idea that some kind of a, wherever this happened exactly, a priest said to the organist, oh, today I want to make them scared or something, or this is important, I want to make them feel God, and then the organist knew exactly which tunes to play. And later everyone was like, oh my God, it was so special. So here's also, huge potential for manipulation. But it's always the same thing, that there is no direct experience. It's always mediated through the preacher, through the teacher.
All things are
And that's,
mediated, though. Don't just hark on the structure. Like your
yeah,
body is
but
mediating your experience. Like, are you going to be
def, def,
bodiless now? Come on.
definitely. Well, eventually I am once again. But
Right,
before
right. But
that,
this is
I'd rather
idealism.
at least, have, direct bodily, in whatever way, contact with those realities, than only have someone tell me about it, and I have to take him by faith. And those individuals or class didn't turn out to be the most trustworthy from the track record so far, whether politicians or whatever else you want to say.
As much as I don't agree, I mean, how would I put it? As much as the education system is very Pink Floyd, another brick in the wall, just fucking do what we say and all this stuff. There's reasons for that, and it's not
There is reason.
always
Oh yeah.
nefarious. No, it's not always nefarious. If you want to be an Olympian, you gotta have to train and sacrifice. Like, even if you're really good, you're going to have to suffer. Like, suffering leads to character quality at levels. It is true. It just is what it is. And hippies don't want to hear this because they want their way and their cake and to eat it too. It's like, you can't just look. I mean, look. For example, it's like marriage. Good example. It's like, I'm not even gonna get into like the legal whatever. It's like, if you find someone that you value, you're gonna have to value them more than other people potentially. This is what monogamy is, right? Polyamory doesn't really work because people don't do that well. We tend to favor things and prefer things and show that preference. And as much as we idealize that we don't do it, we fucking do. So if you wanna be an Olympian or a strong thinker or whatever, a musician, it's like Miles Davis at his best.
Still
Like,
doesn't mean you have. This still doesn't mean always
formation
including
severity
the
is
include.
necessary.
Yes, yeah, wonderful. But that
So
still
to
wouldn't
harp
have
on
to
it
be.
overall
It's
is kind of
still
childish. I think.
no,
It's like schools suck.
no.
It's like they
No,
may
no,
be
no, no,
nuanced
no,
and
no,
improved
no,
upon,
no,
but they're
no.
not.
Okay,
Education's
Jordan,
helpful.
I'll let you go first.
Education's helpful, or else we'll.
Yeah.
Trust me.
I feel like every perspective is valid within the context of that person's reality tunnel. So I think what Jim's sharing is totally
Well, let's just
valid
talk about
for
the
him and
practice.
probably many other people. And I would totally agree. There's a lot of upside. Like my ultimate attitude is essentially that I try to cultivate is essentially one of radical gratitude. That's just all embracing of every aspect of existence. And so, yeah, I probably should actually do an exercise where I go through and I list out like 100 reasons why I'm grateful for my school experience, because I'm probably presently imbalanced toward seeing the defects and seeing the shadows.
Which has its place. Jesus flipped
at,
tables.
at the same time. Yeah. Like there's absolutely like a lot of good things about our current school system. I don't mean to trash it entirely. I just feel that on the whole, if I were to think about the most kind of holistic or advanced one, it would be one that would still have ways to do the things you're saying, Jim, and like discipline children, have them go through rigorous things, have them go through things that require them to cultivate strength and bravery and courage, especially if the child is individually called in that direction, like called to sports or called to intensive training. There would be just so much ability to factor individual differences in that system. But I just feel like there's ways to develop something that would be so much more holistic,
More
would have all
nuanced.
the advantages of the current system, but would then just have vastly more nuance and holistic sensitivity.
Retro's right. I'm a contrarian. I'm a fucking Naismith. And I mean, if somebody says Jesus is the way, I'll say no fucking way. And if someone says I'm an atheist, I'll say, have you thought about
So now,
Jesus?
just to be clear, so
It's
yes,
real.
generally, Jordan, I agree with you, and I also want to say that even seeing all the defects or whatever strange the schooling system is, that is a perfectly positive experience in my book, because I would know at
because then you
least
can update the map.
for 99%, plus, I wouldn't want to subject them to. Maybe for a few it fits. I just wanted to say that even to have all of this severity or whatever you want, Jordan already alluded to it. The question is whether it's driven by fear and called to by the headmaster that doesn't even know the first thing about how to properly treat children, most likely.
Do you think most teachers and educators are fascists who want to beat kids, or do they want to instill wisdom into the next generation? Which do you think is the general consensus for somebody who's called into education? I'm not even into education. I'm just like, let's not be retarded.
But I would just say, like, to jump in on that question, Jim, I would just say, like, even the best intentioned person, when they're operating in a paradigm, when they're operating in a paradigm of kids need to come and sit in these desks and be still 8 hours a day, and that's just the normal school reality,
it could be
then
nuanced. We can improve upon this model.
You have this intrinsic, authoritarian structure there that requires kids to do something that's really not in line with our ancestral nature, to be moving around and tactile and hands-on and learning things by interacting with reality.
No, you're right about
that. It just
that.
feels like designed to break the spirit of a child,
right?
So many of which don't. The last thing they want to do is sit in that goddamn desk all day, and then we're medicating the kids. I mean, it's just.
Well, look, think about this. Aren't you glad you learned words?
Before you go on again, Jim. This, but I mean, come on.
No, this is real.
This is real. I would say refine your argument.
Are against modernism. Modernism has its issues. So like assembly line education is not going to work. But that beat before, when kids were like, oh, they have no literacy and they're working in coal mines, why don't we give them a standard of education so they can elevate themselves out of that poverty potentially? This is so many layers of things. It's like,
and
it's not just one
we
thing.
will also discuss how the illiterate children even ended up in the coal mines in the first place and what that
karma
exactly is.
It's God's
No,
will, or what?
that's
Who
not
knows,
that's
right?
not
I
that
don't
is
know,
not what
man.
that's not what I'm talking about.
It's
However, just
complicated.
to put it is not so complicated, but to put it in one
It's
encapsulated
happening.
in one simple sentence is the question is just like with everything, whether the education system is based on fear and pressure and all of that, or fear, or whether it's based on love and excitement.
But is
And
that a
of
false
course,
okay. So
and
make it
of
like, hey,
course,
it's
we
exciting
can.
not to lose your life to saber-tooth tigers. Let's teach you how to hunt them instead of being a victim.
Well,
Is
for
that the I
example,
mean, you got to the nuances and the tooling have to be there, but like you have to understand the spirit, the zeitgeist. I think of education in general isn't because we tend to we tend to characterize things for our preferences in reaction to things petulantly. So it's like if you don't like something, and everybody has preferences. So it's like if I like order, I'm going to say those rebel scum, fucking the Death Star's the best. We're going in and making shit better. We're bringing order to the chaos, and that is true from their perspective, right? Sure. And then the Rebel Alliance is like they're blowing up planets arbitrarily and they're killing fucking people in Star Wars. And what the fuck is going on? And the dark forces are at play here and stuff. So it's tricky. It's not just one is good and one is bad. It's like it's really tricky stuff. I'm getting all jazzed up because it's like,
I just want
especially
to jump
reading
in and say
Peterson's stuff. Yeah,
thank you for that point. I really appreciate it. Actually, it feels very Jordan Petersonian, and I feel like it
I'm
helps
hooked
to
on his
helps to
bullshit. What can I?
it helps to counterbalance my own bias toward the matter. It also reminds me of John DeMartini, who has this thing called the breakthrough experience, which is fundamentally based on
Not DMT.
guiding people through a process of basically no, it's not psychedelic. He guides people through a process of essentially going through a difficult experience in their life and basically mapping out all of the kind of balance, bring the experience kind of into equilibrium for them
Like
so that
synthesize it.
they're
Yeah.
not extremely like biased toward the negative interpretation
Have you seen
of
Inside
the
Out?
thing.
It's
So
that.
I have
Have you
not
seen
seen
pictures?
Inside Out.
Bro, you got homework. So now you got fucking Minority Report, Inside Out. I huff the
Okay.
fumes of the best culture available, and I will tell you what's
Okay.
valuable or not. Everything is a grain
Okay.
of rice in the universe, yeah. But dude,
Remind me to
Inside Out.
watch those. Yeah.
No,
Remind me to watch
it's
those.
crack. I cry every time. It's Buddhist as fuck. It's Jungian as fuck. I mean, basically, you have the person, and then inside them are the personality. Anger, joy, fear, sadness, disgust, the things that drive us primally, that we think we wouldn't identify it with consciously, but that are quote driving our vehicle somewhat. It's gnarly. Inside Out, Minority Report. Yeah, I'll remind you. Good student. See, I don't have to be severe to you. Some kids just sit there, stare out the window, and they needed this shit. It's for their betterment. And then some kids are like, "How do you spell Minority Report?" And it's like you're taking it too seriously.
Yeah.
Calm the fuck down. It's tricky. I
Yeah.
mean,
All I
hope
can say is that as a father, I don't intend to send my daughter to the public school system. So that is something that I still hold on to. Even hearing the counterbalancing perspective, I feel like some combination of homeschooling or perhaps like Montessori or Waldorf or one of these kind of newer paradigm schools that are more hands-on. I feel that is more holistic.
Retro doesn't get this is my fucking show. He's like, mute him. He's talking too much. It's like, what do you think Team Rabbit Hole is, bruh? Anyway, it's like this is my ponderings out loud with Raphael
well, David,
refereeing.
you may like it or not, but some people came here because they heard of the David Ewing Jr.'s interview on the channel.
Oh yeah,
and
he's too
now
afraid to come on
they're
and talk about
listening
his
to
real
you.
life. I want him on, but he's like, I only want to talk about my tablet with the 10 Commandments. I will not talk about the life leading up to that tablet. It's like biography is necessary. Who the fuck are you?
Not everyone.
CIA? What's going on here? Anyway,
CIA.
disinformation's a bitch. Anyway. So, no. Okay. So let's just talk about education for a second. And you do have a child. This is a perfect timing because it's like, how are you going to raise your child? Are you just going to be like, do what you please, little boy? It's like, that's not wise, probably. Although leaning in that direction is better than saying, my will be done and you will be in my image or whatever. So it's tricky shit.
Yeah,
I don't have to deal with this.
Sure.
I'm a bachelor.
I think it's an extremely nuanced dance that we're feeling into all the time. But in general, like my prayer and my approach and my calling is essentially to tune in with Leela's own unique soul as deeply as I can and attempt to create the conditions to nurture the most organic, the most artful, the most beautiful flowering of that unique soul. And in some ways, that's going to involve structure, and it's going to involve order, and it's going to involve boundaries. And in other ways, it's going to involve free play, and it's going to involve direct experience, and it's going to involve flow, and it's going to involve creativity. And the exact balance of that will become more and more clear over time as we literally talk to her about it, as we literally just continue to know her and sense her as she blossoms and sense her at every stage of the process and try to just maintain a beginner's mind with respect to who she is and what direction it feels like she's authentically being called in from her soul, and then attempting to design environments and architectures that essentially will challenge her and allow her to develop these kind of heroic and warrior qualities that are essential in the world, while also really nurturing that inner child that just wants to play and create in the way that comes most naturally to it, which I feel is really like undernourished overall by our current setup and world. We kind of believe that childhood just kind of ends at a certain age, or like, you're 5 years old now, so it's time to go to child prison 8 hours per day. It's like, okay, something's a little off there. So
It's
yeah,
tricky.
that's my answer. Yeah.
I think the indoctrination thing with education is like, we would ideally, this is a presupposition, I'm not saying it's absolutely this, but it seems to be like, how can we best make you a Swiss Army knife for the world at large? Because if you're not formed in some way, the world will shape you through suffering that we can diminish if you're literate, that you can
Oh
diminish
man,
if you're aware at some level.
if we wanted to make people Swiss Army knives, though, would we just literally have them memorize information all day and regurgitate it at the proper times, or would we actually have
That
them
was the good and
do
healthy thing.
a diverse array of creative tasks that require adaptability and require
It's a
fluidity and
pendulum.
require innovation? Like
It's a
we're
pendulum.
literally just having kids memorize information all day and regurgitate it at the proper times. Like Google doesn't exist. I mean, this is so outdated. It's
One
really
solar
like,
flare, we're fucked. No one will have any information. So, no, it's tricky because look, you're coming. I mean, it's a pendulum, right? So at some point there was like education was like for the priest class alone, and everybody basically had folk culture, if you want to put it that way. It's like we play games and we make it work. We make our food, we hunt or we garden or whatever. We're part of a society. We lean into each other. Feudalism has its benefits. They were a lot less existentially funked up than us. We're like, what do I do? It's like, okay, I guess I'm the fucking barrel maker. I'll go do that for a few hours. So it freed up actually a lot of creativity potential. It's tricky because it's tricky. It's like anything. It's like you will not, how do I say this? I think Stephen Hawking says, like, if you want, I mean, this is weird. If you want an apple pie, you have to build a universe. It's like certain things demand certain things of certain things to create themselves. Like Crowley would say certain things. I mean, I'm very much paraphrasing, but it's like certain things beget certain things. I'm trying to
yeah,
put this in a certain way. So it's like, how do you get like, instead of being like, well, the pharaoh is going to have a good life and everybody else just deal with the hierarchy, because hierarchies exist regardless of how fair they are. We've become more and more illumined to the fact of individual value. So we've Magna Carta fought for and Revolutionary Wars fought for individual, which is a Judeo-Christian principle. Other religions don't value the individual quite nearly the same way. When you get the idea in the system that like you have an individual soul that matters, that changes the way you act in the world, ironically enough. So it's like there's real good benefits to Judeo-Christianity outside of, what people tend to lambast it for. It's like it gave us sovereignty, the idea of sovereignty. This wouldn't have happened otherwise, probably.
I think one thing I would say in response to what you're saying is just that I feel like life, as we've touched on, inherently initiates every one of us. It's human life is like it's like hard mode
Life is the
in
school.
terms of the levels of creation. Like it doesn't feel like one of the easier levels of creation. It's an initiatory experience any way you slice it, and so therefore I feel like
you
for
guys
me,
aren't wrong though.
I agree with what you say. I affirm
Modernity
my life
has
journey.
shadows.
I affirm the life journey of myself and all beings as best I can. And those life journeys involved massive suffering and difficulty and broken systems that were required to forge those things into the warriors and geniuses that they became. So I totally resonate with that point. And at the same time, I just feel like if these architectures were flowing from a wiser place that was more connected to source, they wouldn't look the way they currently look. So that is my opinion, my perspective, that there are more artful and more holistic and more nuanced ways to handle this project of human education, and I'm interested in exploring what those might be.
Well, see, okay, so for example, all of us saying, and I love what you just said, it's very profound and beautiful, so I should acknowledge it. I tend to just be like, of course that was genius, whatever, fucking the next point. Do you say beautiful things well? So high five, trust me, that's why we have you on
Thanks,
here.
man.
It's funny because like we bitch about modernity and technology. It's like we have to come to the place in the pendulum where we've done too much of it, and then we have to pull back. But there was a time when we're like, there's no such thing as a safe, like if we don't build a wall, the fucking Genghis Khan's coming in and raping all of my kids. Like, we got to build some technology here. Like it's tricky. Like we come out, like history is a long struggle to keep chaos at bay. And that's what the ancient myths are talking about. And whether Mesopotamian, Egyptian, Christian, whatever, it's like hey, as liberal minded and pro drug we are, it's like chaos. The real thing is like it will tear you to shreds and not care about you. So it's like in
Yeah.
order to survive better, we have to have some value structure,
Yeah.
fucking points of hope or
Yeah.
intention towards a future. Like if we just sat here and said, I'm going to eat when I can, it's like not many people are
Yeah.
going to live very long. It's like you have to have
Yeah.
systems of food production, seemingly, or whatever. So
Yeah.
I love what
Yeah.
we're coming to, though, is it's basically meta modern, postmodern. It's like, look, there's value to the shell. Like we've gotten about as high up as we can. AI, whatever this modernal situation, everybody's a DJ now and fucking yay the internet. It's like, okay, well, I have more information than the goddamn Library of Alexandria, but look, I can't even figure out what I want to eat tonight. It's like we're hitting an impasse here where there's going to be a singularity maybe, but we're hitting a point where it's like, more options doesn't make it better. More tech doesn't make it better. It makes it more convenient, makes it more, participatory, novel. I mean, it's depends on your value structure, right? It's like this is the best, craziest time to be alive, and yet all of us are sitting around going, "Am I allowed to go outside because the government thinks I have COVID?" It's like what? That we're not free at all. Like your pioneers who just like sat down with a teepee were more free than me. It's like what's going on here? So modernity, though, it had to occur. It's a natural. It seems like a necessary causal thing. I was like, look, we had to come to a place of ossification, just like the rabbis sucked ass and Jesus came through and was like, you guys are missing the point. It's like, look, there's beauty in technology and advancement and understanding, but they're not the thing. And we have to kind of pull back. And like you're saying, use nuance and creativity and flow and ideally it'd be cool. This
Yeah.
sounds crazy. It's like
Yeah.
get a genetic profile and whatever, an astrological profile and
And,
feed it to an AI and then be like, how should we best model this kid's reality? Like given the data, right?
Oh
But
man, yeah, that sounds yeah, a little bit. Oh, I don't know if I would push the button on printing that result from the AI. That's tricky. That's like, yeah, raises questions of like, at what point does AI, yeah, how far can AI be trusted, and to what extent are AIs take overable by kind of hostile intelligences, hostile forces, um, anti-divine forces, this type of thing.
Yeah, well, I
But yeah,
don't know about anti-divine, but I think it's kind of funny, everyone's going crazy. I don't know. Let me ask you like this. How impressed are you by current developments in AI from what is publicly available?
I feel like we're now firmly in the era where AI is very palpably surrounding us. It's really like, damn, okay, there has been a clear kind of quantum leap, I would say, in terms of like Mid Journey and Chat GPT and this type of stuff. It's like, whoa, we've reached a new echelon. We've quantum leaped into a new stratosphere here with AI.
yeah, it's a renaissance
I
of technology.
Yeah,
It's like,
I'm not like I'm pretty blown away by it, honestly. I think it's quite astounding where it's at, and at the same time, I mean, the possibilities are, infinitely beyond that for where it could be, or where intelligence and life could be and can be and will go. So it's all relative, I guess, how I would assess it. But
So
I
just
think it's cool.
yeah, I mean, I think it's cool. I have to be honest. I
well, it's
mean, with the
novel.
art,
We all agree with that. It's like it's cool, but like, is it
Yeah,
good?
it's novel.
That's the
Yeah,
question.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think the art can be interesting. In terms of the chatting and whatever options, I'm not so impressed yet. So and anyhow, it's just mimicry, right? And agglutination of
Yeah.
all the information, and ultimately, it's human input condensed and then filtered through whatever algorithm the programmer chose. I just wanted to refer to this idea of what it would be cool to ask an AI how to educate the child. Well, given certain profiles, there may even be some interesting bits, and if it has good programmers and a good database and so on. But the real joke, of course, is, in my view, that we already all are the perfect AI. Just people don't realize it. AI, in terms of artificial construct as a human with certain qualities and certain systems, let's say, and we already have all of that capacity and more, whether it is to paint, whether it is to draw information, whether it is to actually empathize with our child and understand what the best education for them would be. So the AI would be an afterthought, if anything, at least from what I
Well, it's an
understand. Just
extension of
as you
perceptual technology, right? So like kids can paint, but aren't we glad perspective came along? It's a little more realistic now. Yay, technology, yay. And the crazy thing in the Marshall McLuhan sense is our tools shape us. So there's a feedback loop. It's like when we became linguistic, we saw the world differently than just animals in an environment, who are dependent upon
Yeah.
solar cycles and herd patterns or
Yeah.
whatever. It's like we
Um,
humans,
yeah, on
whatever they
that
were
point, I would say
before.
Midjourney's definitely shaped my perception. Like this background is actually something I made in Midjourney within the
Oh
last
shit!
couple days, and I was just like, oh, I'll just throw this up there. But
What's the explanation
yeah, I
behind
mean,
the trigger words or whatever? Like, what did you
uh,
what inspired that?
yeah,
Let's give your inner
the
mounting flame a little credit. Don't just
I
say
think
the AI
the
did this. It's like you inspired it to make that.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I collaborated with it, my imagination, and the prompt was interesting. It was something like the unsayable, unthinkable, indefinable, like supreme absolute,
It's a hot
something
air
like
balloon
that.
race.
And then I put like cartoonish animated pastel colors, something like that, and that was the prompt. And this is one of the things that came out of it.
Hold
So
on,
that
duck
was
down again for just a second, because it's like there's so there's like what, this flame temple of wisdom that's beyond everything, and then
yeah,
like
It's like the
our like
Castle of Oz
mobile
or something.
perspectives.
Maybe it just has
Yeah.
the wrong color. But I
yeah. It's
mean, wrong color,
pretty
different
wild.
color.
But yeah, Midjourney's been a trip, man. I mean, seeing what the AI,
Literally.
it's weird. Like I feel like there is such a thing as almost like channeling through AI in like
Oh yeah.
yeah, in I don't know, ways that are more or less kind of tapped in some sense. Because a lot of what people are getting out of the AIs, it's kind of like, oh, that doesn't really like hit me on such a deep level, and some of it hits you on like a really deep level. So it's kind of like, yeah, there's this role now of the prompt artist or kind of the AI coaxer or channeler to see what kind of realms you can like pull images from. And then I've totally been in a
It's
weird
techno shamanism.
yeah, I've been in a weird relationship with these images that the AI's, you know, like pooping out into my field of vision. I mean, they're definitely influencing me in some kind of strange way. I mean, it feels at times very revelatory and psychedelic and like, oh wow, that's taking a vision I had or like a notion that I had and just kind of flipping it, twisting it in a new direction for me that allows me to see a different dimension of the concept I was like giving to you. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, it's almost like a very, very strange collaboration partner, like this strange intelligence. So, yeah.
And as complicated as we are, man, it's like looking in a mirror that like it's like you see yourself like not in 3D glasses or something, and then you're looking in the mirror and you could see like this like
Mm,
it's just trippy because it's going to influence the way we look at each other, ourselves, the world,
yeah,
creativity, language, possibilities
big
of
time. Yeah.
data computation, and like symbolism and all this stuff. It gets crazy. If the
Couple
presumption
things
is
that
that, oh yeah, go
couple
ahead.
things I saw recently that were super cool were couple developments. One, this guy I follow created a blog where you can just enter any title of a blog post, and an AI will generate that exact blog post in this writer's exact like unique voice and with this writer's like own views and philosophy.
It's
So
like
now
ultimate
you can,
ghostwriting.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
here, do
ultimate
the work for
ghostwriting.
me. I'm gonna sit here.
So that's
Oh
pretty crazy.
no!
That's super crazy. And
How do
then
you feel
another
about that though?
I
Like, do you think that's the ultimate
one other example, and then before I forget, is just that another friend of mine said that he's now able to code 2 to 10 times faster, depending on the project and context, with Chat GPT. Actually, that Chat GPT allows him to code like exponentially faster because he asks it to just create chunks of code, and then he quickly like debugs that code and like
it's like a
slots it
personal
in.
think
And
tank. It's
so,
like, here's something I'm dealing
yeah,
with. And like
yeah,
back in the 50s, they were like, eat acid and think about your problem. And that's what they kind of did back
yeah,
in the day. And now they're like,
yeah.
ask Chat GPT. What do you think about that? The is it irresponsible of us to, I mean, look, it changes what mean being human, meaning human being meat. What I'm trying to say. What does it mean to be a human? At some point, it was like survival in a fire is a big deal, and like
Mm.
okay, and now it's like, hey, I can literally have Game of Thrones written by an AI for me, and it's in my.
Oh no,
Uh,
the Game of Thrones AI threw him
Yeah,
out.
I can answer the
I get.
question. I think I know what he was getting at. Essentially,
Hmm.
my answer to that and like what I feel about that topic is basically that it's to me just another. It's like another aspect of the divine poetry of being. Ultimately, it's like a beautiful aspect of the divine poetry of being that's coming forth, just like everything else. From kind of like the a more zoomed out perspective, it's just like it's another really astonishing and completely unsayable aspect of the divine poetry doing what it's doing. From a more like zoomed in kind of pragmatic human level perspective, I feel like I feel like there's a lot of traps there for humans to fall into, where their life could become increasingly soulless because they rely on AI more and more, and they're having AI like write their blog posts, and they're working with it so much that they start thinking and kind of talking like AI, and they become increasingly heartless because the
They
AIs don't
outsource
feel
the human experience
yeah,
into
the
the
AIs don't
robot.
feel particularly heartful at this point. Like you can get Midjourney to cook up images that are fairly heartful, but ChatGPT, I mean, from what I've seen of it, it sounds basically heartless. It just basically sounds like
It's like a
a
Wikipedia
pure
article.
automaton.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's even like drier and more like I don't know, just
And that's also
drained of
interesting
all
because, especially
heartfulness
with
than
just
Wikipedia.
since it's only chat and you cannot really tell if it has a heartbeat, they could, and I'm now predicting, which is not something, so particular in
Uh-oh.
this case, that they
Magician
will
card.
create some kind of emotional engine that at least simulates, because it's only text, so it would be easy to do actually, and you could attach value, I guess, and so on, and mood, and you could certainly do it a lot better, that it would at least appear less of an automaton. But yeah, they didn't put much effort into that yet, it seems.
Yeah,
Well, it's
yeah.
the fucking cave paintings before Da Vinci. You got to walk before you or crawl before you walk. It just is what it is. And
Yeah.
I'm not even like a Luddite where I'm like burn this down. I guess in some way, like the Matrix, here we come. Like that's a logical extension of these things. Where it's like you're saying, if you've seen Wally, Jesus Christ, how many movies am I going to mention that you haven't seen?
I haven't
Wally
seen
is like,
Wally.
okay, it's another Pixar movie, well worth watching. But basically, people externalize their technology enough, kind of like we have, to the point where they're just fat, lazy things that are stupid and don't even use their bodies. And it's like, are we losing what it means to be us? Yeah, kind of. I haven't seen that, but I've heard enough about it. I should have by now. If we what's it called? Outsource the struggle of being human. Which look, great art. Like Beethoven went deaf, and some of his best shit is because of that. It isn't just like the notes on the page. It's the experience articulated. So I don't know if AI will ever be doing
And
this.
that's where I kind of question there's a lot of, I mean, on one level I totally understand when a lot of artists and creators are getting concerned that AI will replace them in a sense. That seems super valid and is very very
Survival
strange
of the
thing to
fittest,
consider
kids. Shut the fuck up. I'm
where things are
kidding.
going to go in terms of the global economic system, and how, if we're going to implement new levels of wealth redistribution, or what if the AI job takeover happens at the level that it seems like it could.
They're predicting
But
50% of jobs. It's like, what are we
what I
going to be
don't what I don't really grok, though, just to finish the point, is basically that when artists and creators are feeling like this kind of removes their purpose, in a sense of like, oh, now the AI can make art better than me, so why would I make art? And for me, that it's just like doesn't resonate at all. I'm like, that's not why I make art. I don't make
Correct.
art because I'm making the best art or because I can make better art than a computer. I make art because this is just like what's flowing forth out of my heart and soul in a way that just feels it's just like a substance is like oozing out of me. It's like breathing. It's like something that is intrinsic to me, and I do this, and it just feels really good, and it provides a mirror for me to like externalize parts of myself and kind of look at them under a magnifying glass. And it just, I mean, there's so many dimensions of why I create art and why I love it so much, where I'm just like, what the fuck, like y'all are
tripping on
it's like
that?
y'all weren't really tapping into art if you feel like the purpose of it is gone just because a computer can make a more detailed image than you. Like that's not what art's about. So yeah,
Well, we can't presume that everybody's as passionate and as inspired as some. Some people are driven by the muse. Let's put it that way. And some people are like, oh, I like what's happening and the benefits of that, so I want to be an artist or director or
Yeah,
filmmaker.
those
Like
people
I want
shouldn't
to,
be those people shouldn't be doing it anyhow. And
and
just
this will be
saying,
a natural cutter of those bad paths.
just because we already passed 2 hours, I'm sure we could go on for a long time. But
Oh yeah, we'll have
let's
to
see
get you
where
back on.
yeah, let's
yeah, for
see
sure. It's
how
I'll
many
interrupt you
years
less.
according to Jim's schedule, but we'll manage somehow.
Anyway, check out the website, jordanbates.life. It's on the bottom. We've put your things. Jordan, sorry for being late myself. You're an interesting dude. If I'm ever in Europe, we're gonna kick it. Or
Yeah,
come
man,
over
let's
to
do that.
Vienna or whatever the fuck. I don't know. It's like, let's all get high and like play with Chat GPT or something. I don't
Fuck
know.
yeah,
But
that sounds fun.
it's like, wait, there's a podcast manuscript and we didn't even speak. What's going on? I'm replaced. Like, good luck fucking algorithming me, bitches. Like, this is like synaptic fire randomness. It's bullshit. So anyway, yeah, any kind of parting thoughts? Or I mean, I know
Yeah,
this
I
is
guess
about what I expected, but yeah.
I would just yeah, I guess I would just wanted to say thank you, express gratitude, and just wish everybody like the most beautiful unconditional love and grace and trust and the beautiful human experience. Like I feel like you can trust life, and thank you for being who you are. It's just kind of the parting thought that comes up. So
Aw,
yeah.
that's a beautiful thing. Your team rabbit hole is fuck. That's like the afterglow of an acid trip, which is like, oh, I love life. I love me. This fruit tastes so good. It's like, oh yeah, all right, everything's awesome.
Yes.
Something that I've been doing at the end of these is reading Yogi tea. They've got little quotes on these teas, and they're great. And today's, and I think it's always succinct. I mean, here it is. It says, personal growth lies within the unknown. Courage permits you to explore this space. So, like you were saying, we're here to be explorers of consciousness. Have courage to do so. Trust the process. You're going to get banged up. No one gets out of here alive, so to speak. But you got to do it.
Final shout out is just shout out to becoming a parent. Becoming a parent is like such a gift. We didn't really touch on that, but I just want to throw it in there that like becoming a parent is a gift. And if you're hearing this and you've had like doubts, but also like a spark around becoming a parent, I would say be open to it, because I feel like that's like the core initiation that's kind of ancestrally built into us to like bring us to kind of mature adulthood on this planet. And it's just such a heart opening gift. It's like, it's just a profound gift. So just want to toss that in there somewhere. So
we'll get you back on and talk about parenthood specifically. I knew this would be ratchet just because I've been sick for 2 or 3 weeks or whatever, and we haven't been doing stuff. So I had like, and you caught me as I was reading with Jordan Peterson stuff. I say this was more manic of me today. I've been like, oh man, I got ideas. They got to come out. Oh my god. So yeah, we got to get you back on, and I will be sedate and compliant and obedient and listening better for those.
I thought you were great, man. I thought you were great. Yeah, you're really entertaining.
No, I'm an
with your
asshole
riffs,
today.
and man, you're sharp. You're so fast. I can barely like keep up with you. I need to.
How do you think my parents felt? Lilu, watch out! You got a firecracker coming down the pipe. So it's like, oh god, here we go. But no, you're great. We got to hang out. Your team rabbit holes fuck. Everybody check out his stuff. You get the deal. Like we're all in this together. We're all walking each other home in a Ram Dass way. But it's like, guys, what a fucking trip. Enjoy the ride.
Yeah. Well said.
Thank you, Jordan, for joining. Thanks everyone for listening.